Welcome to the NFL, NBA. Sorry, deeper dive. I'm still sick, man. I'm still getting over this. It's a great start. NBA Deeper Dive presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. I'm Dave Lockren. With me, Adam Scher. Hey, man, how are the holidays?
They were good. Oh yeah, I haven't talked to you in a while, but
I
yeah,
think we talked. We did Thursday, right? Thursday after Christmas, but I think that's
yeah,
it. Maybe Monday. I don't know. Maybe Monday, but I haven't talked to you after the New Year.
yeah. No, it was good. Christmas was relaxing. Combined it with Hanukkah. New Year's was really relaxing. I didn't leave my apartment, so that was really nice. How was yours?
Not bad. Not bad. Well, actually, it sucks. New Year's Eve, we had to go to a wedding, which, I mean, why would you schedule a wedding on New Year's Eve? People have plans, people have their little traditions. I didn't go. I told Justine, I was like, listen, you go. Her sister and her sister-in-law were going with her, and I was going to go, but I just felt like shit. So the last thing you want to do is be around like blaring DJ music, for 5 hours and an hour drive up and back. It just wasn't happening. So I watched The Joker. Pretty good. Watched The Lighthouse. It's a wild black and white movie with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, where they just like try and kill each other in a lighthouse. And watched the movie called, did you see, and don't worry, happy to have you guys with us. I know we're live. We're getting started in just a second. Did you see the movie Us by the same guy that created the movie, the one where like the white family was bringing black people in and like turning them into zombies, basically?
I know what you're talking about, but no, I didn't see it.
No? Okay. That one was good. Us, terrible. Don't watch it. One of the worst movies I've ever seen. Anyway, today's show is sponsored by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. They got some big contests coming up for this weekend's NFL postseason games. Got 4 of them this weekend, 2 Saturday, 2 Sunday. You look at the NFL lobby, you've got $150,000 NFL baller, $15K to first. Good stuff, man. $50K baller, $25 to enter too. They got 2 of them. That's $10K to first. And if you look, there's some no management fee contest as well. Some no veterans contest for anyone that's just starting there. I mean, you can be good at DFS, but if you're just starting to play, a little workaround there is you can enter those no veteran contests. Just use the sign-up code Awesemo. When you sign up, you'll get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points. The YSRPs, baby, they're good as cash. You can use them on the site to play and win real money. Go to awesemo.com. AWESEMO. Click on the NBA tab. You'll see articles. And the second one down is Cash Building Blocks by EMAC. It's free. At the bottom of that article, you'll see the Yahoo link. Click that. Use the sign-up code AWESEMO. And when you deposit, get up to $30 in Yahoo Sports Rewards points. If you don't want to wait till Saturday, you got the $50K NBA baller today. There are CSV uploads and edits now. There's legit MME over there at Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports. And quite frankly, the competition just isn't as stiff. So use that link, use the sign-up code Awesemo, and get over there, sign up, get your YSRPs, and become a baller today. All right, man. Question I always ask, we got a 9-game slate. And I'll tell you straight out of the gate. I mentioned this to you this morning. I'm sure you and Josh discussed it on the strategy show. This might be the wildest slate of the season when it comes to how different the pricing is across DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like on DraftKings, I was talking to Josh about it right before the show. It's a really, really interesting slate in that we have Luka at 12K, with very, very little value that you feel good about, but Luka projects as just far and away the best player on the slate. So it's I've been just kind of going back and forth, like, man, do I just hope for the best with all these terrible values, or do I risk not having the guy that scores 80 fantasy points today? On FanDuel, it's completely different because Luka's 10-8. There's a million underpriced guys, and you can pretty much do whatever the hell you want. So on both sites, it's, I think, an interesting tournament slate, because on FanDuel, you're going to have a lot of really, really popular plays because they're very clearly underpriced, but there's still good plays around them. On DraftKings, you're going to have really popular plays, I would think, because people are just going to, like, anyone who was mispriced a little bit is really going to stand out on DraftKings today. So in both situations, I think you'll get some concentrated ownership for a 9-game slate, which is always, I think, pretty fun, but it's just wildly different between the two sites.
Yeah. And I mentioned in today's deep dive, which you can check it out on awesemo.com. Adam and I switch off each day. You're actually doing a couple more days than I am this year. Premium piece, but we spend a ton of time on it. if today's a great day to play on FanDuel if you feel like spending no time researching how to identify the top plays
and also guessing at a bunch of injury news.
Correct. Exactly. Because at this rate, it's difficult. You look at guys like Christian Wood, Marcus Chris. There's a lot more. I'll even throw into the mix Maxi Kleber. He's another one where DraftKings actually and appropriately preemptively priced him up.
I'll throw Bruce Brown in there too.
Bruce Brown's another one.
Everyone who plays for the Timberwolves.
Exactly. And you know what? Alec Burks is like 5,600 or 5,200 as well, which is
that's a good one too. Yeah, at small forward.
Yeah, sure. That's a huge one, right? So there's a lot. We'll get into all of it. Again, glad to have the usual crew with us, and I'll be monitoring chat throughout the day. I've also mentioned this, but each week giving away one all access platinum Awesemo Plus pass for the week, a 1 week pass, all access to what Adam and I think is the best comment of the week. If it's so good that it happens on Monday, you will get a free week. Maybe today. One thing of advice though, Adam. We don't want people trying too hard, right? Because then it gets out of control and it's just not funny.
Sure. I don't even know what you're talking about, but yeah.
That we're going to give away 1 week pass each week to the best comment in YouTube chat. You get some tryhards though, and then it just, it goes off the rails. Denver, Indiana, and I don't blame you for not paying attention. I don't blame you. I'd probably do the same thing if you were doing reads on the other side.
You do the same thing when I'm talking about the actual games, so I'm sure you would.
That's unfair. That's very unfair. It happens like once every 3 months. Indy, Denver, 209 over under. Pacers 1 point favorites here. 105 implied for them. 104 for Denver. On paper, it's just a really unfriendly game, but it's crazy that we're going to have to, Josh says more like once every 3 games. We're going to have to spend a little more time than usual on some of these bad games because on DraftKings, you'd said to me today, there's like 7 games that you could spend 30 seconds each on, which means that we're going to have to spend more time on them to try and break them down a little bit further. So, here you have it. Malcolm Brogdon is out of this one. On the other side, no injuries for Denver, no significant injuries at least. I don't have anything from Denver outside of maybe some trace amounts of Nikola Jokic. On the other side, though, I mean, what are you doing with Holiday now that he's priced up? McConnell has played well, but he has seen his price tag come up a little bit too. And then the usual cast of characters like Sabonis, who has been pretty much an instant double-double. What are you doing with the Pacers side first?
Yeah, I think the Pacers side is the more interesting side with Brogdon out.
Do you have anything from Denver? Like I said, why don't we just clear that one off the board first?
Nothing that's a priority for me. I mean, people know Jokic is good. We are waiting on Gary Harris news. If he sits, I would, and we'll have this before lock, but I would assume that Michael Porter comes back to the starting lineup. I think Torrey Craig started last game just because he was facing James Harden. If that's the case, you do have a $3,900 Porter on DraftKings that would be really valuable. But if we assume the starting lineup is intact, there's not really much.
Okay, so let's talk Pacers then.
Yeah, so I mean, Holiday on DraftKings I think is fine given the fact that there's so little value elsewhere. Like I think he's a little bit overpriced for this matchup, but it's not crazy. On FanDuel though, 5,100 really stands out. A really good price point on him. Same really goes for Sabonis, where he's 8,400 on DraftKings. He's 8K on FanDuel. So I think a better value on FanDuel, but you do have to keep in mind that relative to all the other guys, like you have Marcus Chris, you have Christian Wood, you have all these other value power forwards there. So I think Sabonis is a good play on either site. Not a very appealing game though, just between two really slow teams, two reasonably good defensive teams as well.
What are your thoughts on Sabonis? I'm just kidding. Do you have anything else like in the backcourt though? I think both of these guys this season in terms of Holiday and McConnell have had, they have presented upside, but I think it's important not to overpay for players like this. So site specific for sure, but also a 9-game slate makes it a little prohibitive.
One thing that I think is interesting, and I don't really I'm not doing a whole lot with it, but Edmund Sumner's out for this game too.
Yeah.
The way I projected these minutes is that Goga gets like 8 minutes off the bench. And so you're able to have Justin Holiday play more of those minutes behind Lamb. And then McConnell plays, like 4 minutes alongside Holiday. There's at least some chance that McConnell just plays more minutes alongside Holiday than we've seen so far. I'm not projecting that, but it's at least a possibility if, you wanted a reason to like McConnell a little bit more. But as is, I have, McConnell at 20 minutes. I have Justin Holiday at 30, which gets me like 18 fantasy points on DraftKings at 3,500. That's, an okay point per dollar value, but you're not really looking at a really high ceiling for Holiday. The only other guy that I really find interesting is Miles Turner is only 5K on DraftKings. He's 5,800 on FanDuel, so not as appealing there, but at $5,000 with the chance that he plays more minutes, because another way that you could see the rotation break down is that he just plays more, like Goga doesn't play and Turner just plays, like 34 minutes instead of 28 or something like that. But gets a little bit of a usage bump without Brogdon as well and is just really cheap. So I think that on DraftKings, Turner looks pretty good.
Okay. Is that it for the Pacers?
Yes.
All right. Cleveland and Charlotte. Here's another one where pricing is going to impact a lot. And it's kind of a blanket statement for the entire slate, but 213 total. Cleveland Cavaliers 1.5 point favorites, 107.3 implied for them, 105.8 for the Charlotte Hornets. You're going to see Kevin Porter Jr. get some more minutes. He was already getting a decent amount of run, but now that Clarkson is out, we saw him play 30. We saw him play 28. Young fella's getting some additional run on a team that's playing for nothing outside of some good draft picks. And then outside of that, it's a pretty good spot for Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson. I think the big question for you is would be, what are you willing to pay for these guys? Because there isn't a ton to pay up for today. And I don't necessarily know that it's worth it, but it is a Charlotte team that in terms of how they fared in the paint, they're allowing the second most points in the paint in the league this season. They've allowed a lot of second chance points. This is definitely a team that has got beat up, whether it's Zeller or whether it's Biyombo, who's a decent but undersized defender. I definitely think this is one spot that we can talk about with Kevin Love. The question is it going to be worth paying for him where he's like 8K on DraftKings?
Right. I think it's obviously a good spot for him and for Thompson. We've seen Love's minutes trending up. He, like last game, he only played 30, but he lost about 5 to the blowout against Toronto. We had seen him play 33, 34 minutes in previous games. One other really interesting thing that happened last game was that in the second half, he played with the second unit. So he was out there with Larry Nance in the front court. And if that continues, those should be more productive minutes for him as well. But the 8K price tag on DraftKings, it's not that it's a bad price. It's just that he's kind of just lumped in there with all these guys that project for like between 40 and 42 points for me. So it's really tough to prioritize, any of them. On FanDuel, though, he's 7,200 and Tristan Thompson is 6,400. Really appealing matchup for Thompson against one of the worst interiors in basketball. The Hornets have been one of the worst teams at defending in the paint this year. Almost 90% of Thompson's points come in the paint. Obviously, he's a good rebounder as well. So they both look like really good plays to me on FanDuel. They both look like acceptable plays that I'll have in some lineups, but that aren't really priorities for me on DraftKings.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing on FanDuel is the amount of value at power forward is abundant. And Kawhi Leonard is power forward eligible there. I'd argue that he's a pretty solid play. We'll get to him soon, but his minutes have been absurd lately. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But I will say, as far as the matchup goes, Kevin Love is fourth in the league in post-up points per game. Only the Grizzlies are allowing more points per possession to opponents in post-up situations than the Charlotte Hornets. So it's certainly a favorable matchup. But like you said, lumped in there on DraftKings is tough. And then on FanDuel, how willing are you to play him and prioritize him over a really, really deep position from a value perspective? I think that's what makes it difficult for me. Outside of the front court, though, Clarkson in Utah now, like I said, Porter getting some additional run. And then you've got, you have your Darius Garland, who has been very, very pedestrian all season long. It feels like his floor or his ceiling is 30 fantasy points. And then Colin Sexton, who, yes, he's getting the minutes, but he's another low upside, low floor guy because you would think he'd be more involved as a facilitator, being that they don't really have any of them on this team, but he just has never gotten that done in the 1.5 years he's been in the league.
Yeah, I think Sexton is okay just because it's a good matchup against Charlotte in terms of them being a bad defense, and he does have a high usage rate. Like he projects to have the highest usage rate on the team, so there is some appeal there. But like you said, he doesn't do a whole lot other than score, and he's not an efficient scorer. So you've got a really low floor there. The one guy that does stand out for me on DraftKings specifically is Kevin Porter because he's only 4,200 on a slate where there's not a lot of value to like. In the 3 games since the Clarkson trade, he's played 25, 30, and 28 minutes. The only competitive game in there was the game against Minnesota where he closed. He played the final 17 and a half minutes of that game. Love was not in, so that's obviously a negative. But he can play multiple positions. So like you could have him close over Chetty, you could have him close over Love for whatever reason. But if he's playing well, I think it's pretty easy for him to be in the closing lineup. But even if he doesn't close and only gets 24 minutes, he's been a 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy for the season. Now he's not playing alongside Jordan Clarkson, though he potentially could be playing more minutes alongside Sexton. But either way, I think there's the opportunity for him to be a little bit more productive in his time on the floor. It's a good matchup against Charlotte. And what is also really appealing to me is that you're going to see a lot of ownership go to really fringe value on DraftKings. Porter's not really getting that much of it. And so I'm pretty comfortable using him as one of my differentiation plays as a value option there.
Okay. Just a public service announcement here. Don't spread fake shit in YouTube chat. I take no pleasure in booting people from chat. I'm not actually the one moderating it, but no problem doing it. Don't post fake news. Don't say someone's out if you think they're going to be out, but they're still listed as doubtful. It does nobody any favors, and it screws stuff up. So don't do that. You get the axe. On the other side, the Charlotte Hornets. Now, Devontae Graham, what are you doing with him where his price, again, it's so tough to say like, oh yeah, great price on FanDuel because so is everyone. $7,700 on FanDuel really isn't bad. It also doesn't stand out because there are so many other discounted players. Devontae Graham, over on our sponsor Yahoo, he's coming in at a reasonable $30, which is pretty nice. $8,200 on DraftKings, going up against the Cleveland team that look, they don't play at an elevated pace. We know that, but defensively they are far from competitive, and that's what makes this matchup good in most cases. It is projected to be a close game. Cleveland does rank 29th in defensive rating on the season. Any interest in the backcourt for the Charlotte Hornets today?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm most interested in. It's not that I'm getting to tons of those guys, but Devontae Graham projects very similarly to everyone else in his price range on DraftKings. So if a lot of it's going to come down to being kind of an ownership game for me there, because if ownership's going to go to him over Lowry, I'll take Lowry. If it's going to go to Lowry over him, I take him. Like, it is a good matchup for him. He should play 37, 38 minutes. He leads the team in usage. He's averaging well over a fantasy point per minute. So I do think Devontae Graham is a good option. It's just a matter of ownership and also roster construction, because kind of like we mentioned at the top of the show, talking about the decisions on DraftKings, I think the biggest decision you have today is, do you go Luka plus a couple of value guys and hope that you hit on the right value, or do you forego Luka and get an extra, Devontae Graham or something like that into your lineup?
Right. Yeah, I know. I have some interest in him. I think he's still a strong play. And, anytime I can say that a player can legitimately get 40 minutes in regulation, 40 minutes in regulation, and he's an easy +1 per minute guy with a 30% assist rate and a 25+% usage rate. Look, Adam, I think there are better plays, but you can still always say that somebody like Graham, given his rates, given his 26% usage rate, I think his assist rate, 36% and 38 minutes in competitive games, that a guy like that is always capable of being in tournament winning lineups.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubting his ceiling. It's just that you're finally at a point where he has to actually perform well for you to be happy you rostered him. Whereas for a lot of this season, it's been like, okay, if I just get like an average game out of him, that's good. And he has the chance to, go nuts. Now you actually need that ceiling game.
Yeah. And at his price, you're seeing a lot of these, I'll call them floor games where he's coming in around like 30, 33 fantasy points.
Right.
That's not getting it done. But again, all I'm saying is the ceiling is there on someone that gets so much run that is so involved in the offense.
Yeah, no doubt.
What are you doing with the rest of Charlotte?
Not a whole lot. PJ Washington is a good value on FanDuel, but so are like 12 other power forwards. So doesn't really stand out. Cody Zeller is cheap on DraftKings. There's at least, some chance that he gets additional minutes and does well, but there's nothing else really outside of the backcourt that I'm overly interested in.
Me neither. And like I said, really tried to dive deep into every game, even guys that like I felt pretty confident I wasn't playing. Maybe something would jump out at me in some of these less appealing games, but just did not come up with anything here. Especially, and I think you'd agree now that this team, the wing and the front court is beginning to get healthy, actually is fully healthy. It just takes shine away from any of those guys that would have been appealing anyway, and their prices are already up. So
we got a little bit of Denver speculation, at least. Gary Harris is out on the court warming up. The beat writer said he looks good going through warm-ups. A different Denver beat writer pointed out that it's a friends and family game for Harris in Indiana. So probably has a little more incentive to play.
Can't wait for it. Gary Harris is available to play.
Right. At least he's a starter. I just hate that shit when it's a bench guy.
No, absolutely. When it's a bench guy, you have absolutely no idea. But assume and also this is an early game. It's a 7 p.m. game. Yeah. The news isn't massive, but I'm glad you did point it out, because if Gary Harris is out on this slate where DraftKings value is scarce, to say the least, it actually would be pretty significant.
Yeah, I mean, if we got news that Porter was starting over Harris, Porter becomes one of my highest owned values. So it's not really important whether Gary Harris plays or not. I'm more interested in if Porter starts. But it's important news for DraftKings.
Who would have thought there'd be a day where you're playing Kevin Porter and Michael Porter in the same lineup? That should end well. Miami and Toronto. Let's keep it rolling here. We've got the Heat 6-point favorites at home, 214 over under. They have a 110 implied, 104 for the Toronto Raptors, who are still dealing with significant injuries. Marc Gasol getting a little bit of on-court workouts in, but still a ways away from returning. Pascal Siakam remains out as well. Norman Powell remains out. He's still a ways away as well. And also Nick Nurse suggested, Adam, that he could be making some adjustments to the starting lineup today. So in the event that happens, we still don't know what they will be, but there is speculation that maybe OG Anunoby would be back in the starting lineup over Patrick McCaw. I don't know. Maybe RHJ goes back to the bench. We'll have to wait and see. But usually when a coach says something like that, they are at least going to make one change before tip-off.
Yeah, I mean, I projected it as if they start OG over McCaw.
Me too.
Because there was enough speculation around that, and also because that's what I thought they were going to do last time, was start RHJ over McCaw. So I kind of just went with that starting lineup and that assumption. It doesn't make a huge difference to me anyway. Like RHJ is a decent value, but outside of that, I'm still not going to get too much Anunoby if he's in the starting lineup.
I'll tell you, this is another one of those games where like I need pricing to be right. I don't want to pay up for players in this. I don't want to overpay for players in this game. I think Bam's interesting on DraftKings just because the center position is oddly not that deep when you're talking about like legitimate value. And I think $8,100 on Bam is fine. Now I will point out that with Marc Gasol and Pascal Siakam off the floor since the 14th of December, their defensive rating has only gone from 103 to 106. Their offensive rating has declined quite a bit, but defensively, three points per 100 possessions. It's noteworthy, but it's not it's not like what Towns is, and I'll tell you what that is in a moment, how bad they've been defensive or offensively without him. But yeah, Bam's just, I say it all the time, a jack of all trades. He's a 36-minute in regulation guy or more. And all of that thing, all of those things kind of culminate to make him viable. Jimmy Butler, I guess you could say the same thing for, but it's still to come full circle. It's still a good Toronto defense. And I don't want to take that away from them.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at. I think that Bam and Butler both look pretty good at their prices, but it's just a really jammed price range. Right now, we have Bam projected for 14% ownership on DraftKings, 16 to Butler. In the crunch I did before the show, I got around the field on Bam. I was a little underweight on Butler, but I'm not reading too much into that because we're still waiting on ownership projections for the Minnesota guys, depending on that news. So a lot can change there. But just looking at how they project relative to the guys around them, I have a little bit more interest in Bam than I do Butler. But I think that they're both pretty decent options just because they play big minutes and they're the two of the main focal points of this offense.
And that's what it comes down to. Sometimes on slates like this, the minutes and opportunity kind of trump everything else.
Right.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. The rest of Miami, I kind of had a tough time seeing anything I felt good about because, like both of us said, it's the minutes, it's the usage, it's the assists, the block shots, the rebounds. With those two guys, they're very reliable. But the matchup still stinks. I don't know that I get to anyone else from Miami for that exact reason.
I have some interest in Kendrick Nunn just because he's only 4,900 on DraftKings, and he at least has some minutes upside. Sure. I have him projected for 30, but I mean, we could see 32, 33. He's a high usage guy. Obviously, he's still competing with Dragic and Butler and Adebayo, and depending who's on the floor, Tyler Hero for looks. But I think the price relative to other options, he's got a little bit higher ceiling than some guys around him.
Okay. Yeah, and I think his minutes are I think Spoelstra is gonna go with run a lot of hot hand at the guard positions.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a spot where I want to be setting rules to, not have more than like two for sure of Nunn, Dragic, and Hero.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Duncan Robinson.
When you look at Nunn against the Sixers, game went into overtime. Dragic and Tyler Hero played the entirety of that overtime period. Kendrick Nunn came back with 3.5 minutes in the second, and Goran Dragic played I think he played like 13 straight minutes or something. And then he played 16 straight minutes to close the game out, not including OT. Kendrick Nunn never came back for a few minutes in the fourth quarter. So just throwing it out there that he could get 30 plus minutes and it wouldn't be a huge surprise. But he could also get 24 and it wouldn't be a shock either. On Toronto, like you said, we're both projecting Anunoby. Hopefully we get this news to be back in the starting lineup. Really not sure how much difference that actually makes. But there's some comments in chat about Lowry and Van Vliet being solid options. Haven't really heard much discussion surrounding Serge Ibaka today now that his price is up there. Really the highest it's been all season outside of a few days ago. What are you doing with Toronto?
Yeah, I'm interested in the backcourt just because of how many minutes they play. Lowry leads the NBA in minutes played or minutes per game this year. He's averaged about 40 since Siakam's injury over those 7 games. Van Vliet plays, into the upper 30s as well. It's not a good matchup, but you do get a little bit more usage for Lowry and for Van Vliet with Siakam out. They're having their minutes staggered, obviously, so that's beneficial for both of them. They don't project really differently than other guys around them, but I think that they're both reasonable options just because of how many minutes they play.
Okay. Do you have anything else for Toronto?
Hollis Jefferson, I mentioned, but like if I have him at 28 minutes at 4,500 on DraftKings, I think it's a pretty good value. Not that I think he has a great game or anything. It's not like it's a very appealing spot, but it's just the lack of other options down there in salary.
All right, let's keep it going then. On the game 4, Minnesota, Golden State. I mean, I don't know. I really 213 over under 108 implied, 108.5 implied for Minnesota, 105 for the Warriors. Timberwolves 3.5 point favorites at home. Now I tweeted this out earlier today about the Minnesota Timberwolves. So the Timberwolves in the most recent 8 games that Karl Anthony Towns has missed, they are 3rd in defensive rating. 3rd. and 29th in offensive rating. You know where Karl Anthony Towns' strengths are. You know where his weaknesses are. His strength is offense. His weakness is defense. They have been markedly better with him on the floor offensively. You look at Gorgie Jang; they are way worse, averaging less than 100 points per 100, less than 100 points per 100 possession with Gorgie Jang on the floor. But their defense has been significantly better than it has with Towns on the floor. And I just think it's an interesting discussion. We can get to the injuries in a second. If you want to read them off, who's out, who's doubtful, who's questionable, that works too. But I do want to get your take on this first, because I think the game stays competitive either way. But there is no denying that the Timberwolves with Towns on the floor make a better matchup for opposing teams. And we've certainly seen that be the case. Gorgie Jang, while he is not an offensive specialist, he is a very good defender. And he's actually anchored this defense over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Defense has played better. Offense is less efficient. Overall,
I
think
love Golden State, by the way. I have to. I don't have a choice.
What'd you say?
I still love Golden State. Right. I don't really have a choice on this slate, but I just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely worth mentioning that they've been playing better, or playing better defensively. It doesn't change a whole lot for me in DFS from a DFS standpoint. Like it still is going to come down to where I can get the best pricing on these Golden State guys. Like I think Alec Burks looks fine on DraftKings at 6,500. I think he looks a hell of a lot better on FanDuel at small forward at 5,600. Same goes for Marquise Chris, who at 5,400 on DraftKings is fine. On FanDuel, he looks even better to me. I think that even though Minnesota's been playing better defensively, Golden State also has been playing better defensively. I still think this is one of the more appealing games on the slate.
So do I. I think it's probably, if you're looking at DraftKings, really everywhere actually, but there's so much good stuff on Yahoo and FanDuel. I think it's probably the best game on the slate, because with the Clippers and Detroit, we'll get there in a minute, but that game has a very high likelihood of getting out of control. Not sure how much you're going to factor that into what you're doing, but yeah, both sides of this really, really appealing. I want to start with the Warriors, though, because with Minnesota, we have to dig into a lot as far as the injury news goes. Damian Lee is actually leading the team in rebound chances per game since his minutes increased. It's impressive. He's second in actual rebounds. He's leading the team in he's leading the team in rebounds, 9.5 per game over his last 6. He's second in rebound chances. Usage is not that high. It's around 22% with D'Angelo Russell, and I'll throw Steph Curry into the mix. I don't even know they played together this year, but with Russell off the floor. And then you have Alec Burks, who very impressive with both of those two players off the floor this year, Adam. With Russell and with Curry sidelined, Alec Burks has seen significant increase in usage, 1.19 DraftKings points per minute. And then we can get into Draymond Green as well, who went from Kerr saying he's going to play 28 minutes to playing 32 plus in every game.
Yeah, the rebounding for Lee.
And Willie Cauley-Stein is out. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The rebounding for Lee's been impressive, and it's something that I'm interested to see what happens going forward, because his rates lately have been a lot higher than his season average. Not going to pretend like I watch a ton of Golden State, but I did notice from watching a little bit that he is kind of getting to he's crashing the boards and kind of nobody else is around him. So it reminded me of Josh Hart a couple of years ago, where you had like this guard just getting a ton of rebounds and we kept thinking it was going to go away, and it never did because it was by design. Kind of seemed like the same thing for Damian Lee. So I'm leaning more towards the rebounds being for real with him. The salary still has really come up. Still not really excited to pay $6,600 on DraftKings for him, but I do think the rebounds are there. I think that Burks looks good. Like I said, better on FanDuel because of the position and the salary than on DraftKings, but a good play on either site. 25.6% usage rate without Curry or Russell on the floor, and should play low to mid 30s in minutes tonight. Marquise Chris is, I think, a good value either way, or on any site. Played 30 minutes last game in regulation. He is always a risk to foul, but you can't really do a whole lot with that. I have him at 28 minutes here. He's a point per minute player or a little bit better. So I think that he's one of the better values. Outside of those two, there's not a whole lot that I really like. Draymond's salary came up a bit. Lee is expensive, as I said. Glenn Robinson's price tag jumped a lot. Bowman is still in that backup point guard role, and his salary came up. So it's basically Burks and Chris as the guys I'm prioritizing from Golden State.
That's on DraftKings, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. With Damian Lee, it's like, the price is at 6,600 is definitely a little bit difficult, but you take Russell off the floor, and I know Lee's not a super high usage guy, but you got to do something. I mean, you have to look somewhere, and Glenn Robinson isn't going to be the one shouldering the offensive load. Eric Pascal's minutes have been down. He's actually, with all of those guys, with Curry and Russell off the floor, Eric Pascal, outside of Alec Burks, has been the highest usage player on the team in that situation. But his minutes have continually trended downward. So I do think this would be and you know what? Quite frankly, Draymond Green is not a high usage player either. He's never going to be. So the shots are going to need to come from somewhere. I am a little bit hesitant to pay that much for Lee, no question. But I don't think he's a bad play here because you just don't have a ton of options everywhere else. I think Burks is your best bet, particularly on FanDuel, where he's priced in the mid 5K range. That to me just sounds ridiculous. And one more thing I'll throw out there. Damian Lee is actually averaging 3 contested rebounds per game over that span. For a shooting guard, that's really good. And it goes to show you that not everything he's grabbing are just, lucky opportunities. Although the average distance is 8.2 feet. So just to put in perspective, Green's 5.6, Cauley Stein 4.2. So he's definitely not grabbing a ton of these around the basket, but the rebounding is there and I like it. I want to close this out before we go to Minnesota with Marquise Chris. You talked a little bit about him, but $5,400 on DraftKings. I think that's fine. He played 34 minutes in an overtime game. What are you giving him? 28, 29 minutes today?
Yeah, I gave him 28, just kind of trying to find middle ground between his, downside risk for foul trouble or whatever else can happen in a game, and the fact that there's nobody really pushing him in his position. Like Golden State clearly doesn't care about playing Amari Spellman. Kevon Looney is out along with Cauley Stein, so there's at least some chance where he just plays way more minutes. So I went with 28.
I've always been real harsh on him because he never looked like he wanted to play defense and he wouldn't box guys out for rebounds. And that's changed a little bit this season. And I like to see that. He's actually, averaging a career high rebound rate. Block shot rate is good enough. And his assist rate is at 16%. So those numbers actually are all significantly improved. I think I'm a little bit more relaxed on the numbers from him or on his I guess I don't even know how to put it. He's trying harder, it seems. I know it's not a good team, but he certainly seems to be giving it more effort. And I do like him today. Do you like him as much on DraftKings as FanDuel in context with the rest of the slate being priced up on DK?
Right. I mean, in context, yes. Obviously, I would rather roster him for $4,300 on FanDuel than 51 or whatever 54 on DraftKings. But when you consider that everybody on DraftKings is more expensive, I think he's one of the better values on DraftKings as well.
Let's talk about Minnesota. If you want to break down the injuries here, who we expect to be out, who we expect to be in, we can do that and then get to the plays.
So we have Karl Anthony Towns questionable, Andrew Wiggins questionable, Treveon Graham questionable, Noah Vonleh questionable, Jeff Teague doubtful. I think that's all.
I think that's it. Yeah. I mean,
Jake Layman's still out.
That's right. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, it's a mess. And yeah. I guess we'll start in the backcourt. We'll assume that Jeff Teague is out. How does that influence your opinion of Shabazz Napier today?
So I like Napier. Yesterday, I was pretty heavy on being underweight on these guys, especially on DraftKings, and taking shots on other players. Today, I don't feel quite the same just because the matchup is better against Golden State, and there's not as many pivots around them that I'm interested in. Like yesterday around Napier, for example, you had Elfrid Payton, you had Markelle Fultz, you had DJ Augustine, you had all these guys that were getting a lot lower ownership that you could go to. That's not really the case today. And, Napier is productive. He's always been a pretty decent DFS player when he gets minutes. And without Teague, Wiggins, or Towns on the floor this year, he has a 29% usage rate. That's something that I think maybe comes down as we go forward, but I still expect a mid-20s usage rate for Napier. I still think that he's a really good option. One thing to point out, though, is if you're looking for a reason to get away from these Minnesota guys, and we say it like every day, they still have a ton of bodies. They called up Jordan McLaughlin from the G League. I'm assuming that Jalen Noel's still up. They have a lot of guys that can play. So this isn't a situation like we had with Golden State earlier this year where these guys have to play big minutes no matter what. I expect, 30 to 32 minutes from guys like Napier and Culver and Covington, but they don't have to.
No, they don't. And I mean, I'd be lying if I said I had any confidence in Jarrett Culver. I know he's played well over his last 2 games, but first of all, do you expect Wiggins to play?
I'm assuming that Wiggins and Towns sit. That's really not based on much. I do think that then calling up McLaughlin is a signal that maybe Wiggins isn't good to go, because why else would they be burning his, like, why would they be burning a day for him if he's not if they don't need him? So that makes me think Wiggins probably doesn't go. Towns, I'm assuming, doesn't go just because what's the point? And it seems like he's dealing with a actual legitimate injury. So I'm assuming they don't play, but that's not based on any sort of real information.
Yeah, and it's the second of a back-to-back too. So
right. I
don't know, man. It's tough. Gorgie Jang, price has come up on him, makes it really difficult, even though he's played pretty well. I guess I'd ask you this: assuming Teague, Wiggins, and Towns are out, prioritize how you're approaching this Timberwolves team. Which, by the way, Golden State still not a good defensive team, but they have been a lot better over the last month, playing at a pretty slow pace. Again, I still think this is one of the best games on the slate, but just a couple things to note there that are significant.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best games on the slate, but it has a lot more to do with the other teams that are playing each other and the pricing on those guys than it does with loving these guys. So yeah, I think that this game really, the Minnesota side, it'll really come down to ownership for me, where I personally end up, because I think that Napier, Culver, Jang to some extent, Covington to some extent, they all look like some of the better point per dollar options. Regardless of site, they're very clearly underpriced on FanDuel, but even on DraftKings relative to other players, they're underpriced. But there's still a million ways for these guys to fail. It's that they don't get the minutes we're hoping for. It's that Jarrett Culver plays like Jarrett Culver. There's so many ways for this to go wrong still. So if they're going to get a ton of ownership, then I'm going to end up coming in under the field. But like right now in our DraftKings ownership projections, we haven't factored in, Towns not playing. So like Jang's projected for low ownership, in which case I get a ton. Same goes for Culver, who right now we have like 8%, and I got over that. If I adjust it to 30%, then I get under it. So I think that they are a lot of the best point per dollar options. In DraftKings cash, I like getting to Napier. I think Culver's fine. But in large field tournaments, I think that I'll have more than I had yesterday, but if ownership's high, I'll still come in underweight.
Okay. Moving on here. Before we do, I should let you know that if you use the promo code 2020 like the year, you get 20 days of Awesemo Plus Platinum membership for $20. From today through the 10th of January, you get $20 of Awesemo Plus Platinum for $20. Phenomenal deal. I mean, you simply cannot beat that. And all you got to do is use the sign-up code 2020. Go to awesemo.com/join. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll see tutorials on all of our most popular tools developed and used every day by Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. All of our premium articles, and look, the ownership projections, player projections, boom or bust tool, top stack tool. There's so much. The lineup builder, there's the fantasy cruncher add-on. You get what you pay for, except in this case, you're getting a lot more than you pay for, because you're getting 20 days of Awesemo Plus Platinum for $20. Use the sign-up code 2020 when you do it. Go to awesemo.com/join today. It's good till January 10th, by the way. I think I mentioned that. All right. Chicago and Utah. And I might just let you run with this one so we can get through these. 209.5 total. Jazz 3.5 point favorites on the road. 106.5 implied for them. 103 for the home Bulls. I mean, go ahead. Just go ahead with Chicago and then Utah.
I think Zach LaVine's a really interesting tournament option. He's the one guy that's like standing out to me from the Chicago side. And it's not standing out in terms of, oh, I don't know how he fails against the Utah Jazz. It's just that he projects very similarly for me to the Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet.
Yeah, this is the same thing I said about him the other day against Milwaukee, that
right.
It could go really poorly, but everyone else was getting way more ownership in the similar price range.
Right. And he's a little bit cheaper, which with how tight pricing is on DraftKings today, that matters. $500 from Zach LaVine to like Kyle Lowry can really make a difference. So I think he gives you that same ceiling. For the season, he has a 31.2% usage rate. Recently, it's been a little bit higher. He's averaging 35 minutes per game over the last month. He certainly can go out there and lay an egg, but that's really the case for anyone that you want to talk about at that price point at guard. They don't have great matchups, or they have one thing or another, kind of working against them. So I think that if his ownership stays low, I will end up over the field on Zach LaVine. But beyond that, I think the pricing is pretty efficient on the Bulls. Like the only salary that looks kind of low is Chris Dunn, but even that, 4,700 on DraftKings. I have him at 30 minutes. He's not a high usage guy. He doesn't do a whole lot offensively. So nothing really looks that appealing to me outside of Zach LaVine.
What about Utah? Bogdanovich, Rudy Gobert, anything you like here?
Yeah, I think they're one of the more appealing teams as far as multiple guys that I'll be getting to. Josh made some really good points this morning that he took from the Dunked On podcast, where Chicago's been very, very good defensively over the last month in terms of defensive rating. They're second in the league.
Are they second now? Wow.
Yeah, they're second, and there's a pretty big gap between them and number 3 Brooklyn. But they were just talking about how teams have been shooting. Chicago's been getting pretty lucky as far as expected field goal percentage on the shots they're giving up compared to what's actually happened. So even if they are a better defense than we expected, or a decent defense, they're probably not as good as they have been recently. They do also play at a slow pace though, which is the less appealing thing to me. But still, you're just getting a bunch of minutes for guys like Gobert, Mitchell, Ingles, Bogdanovich. Jordan Clarkson's playing around 26 minutes. His salary is pretty expensive, but for Mitchell, Ingles, Bogdanovich, I think that they're guys that I'll be getting to just because they look like pretty decent options at their salaries.
Okay. Top option from this game?
LaVine.
Okay.
It's not with a ton of confidence. It's just that I think him and Mitchell have, the same ceiling, and he's less expensive than Mitchell.
I don't have an issue with that. San Antonio, OKC. We keep it rolling here. We got 4 games to go. And some of this we're just not going to spend a lot of time on. I promise it's not because we don't want to. It's because we don't really have to. 217 total. Spurs 2-point favorites. 109.5 implied for them. 107.5 for OKC. You would think that this game would be a little bit more inviting, but at least for me, I don't know how much I'm going to get to. Enlighten me. Maybe there's something that I'm missing here that's standing out as a great play.
There's not.
Okay.
I mean, there's options that you can get to. Like, I hate talking about it like that, but the way this slate is, there's just not a lot that I look at and say, oh, that's a priority. Yep. It's more of just spreading, ownership around to a bunch of guys and hoping to get, some low-owned pieces. I think that Aldridge and DeRozan look fine. Like I have Aldridge at 38 DraftKings points. I have DeRozan at 36.5. That's fine for their salaries. It's nothing that I'm super excited about. Oklahoma City's 26th in pace over the last month. It's not a super appealing matchup. Beyond that, you just get into minutes issues. I have Murray at 28. I have nobody else on the team above 22 except for Bryn Forbes at 26, which may as well be 22. So it's not a lot that I like. I do have some interest in DeRozan and Aldridge.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really have a ton of interest in much. I don't really feel like paying up for DeJounte Murray either. So I find myself pretty low on this team today. What about the other side, OKC? Does anything stand out to you as a top option? I will say that, Danilo Gallinari is at least okay, reasonably priced on DraftKings, where a lot of guys are priced appropriately and not in a good way. Danilo Gallinari, kind of a low range of outcomes player, but it's a San Antonio team that's middle of the road in defense and pace. What about you?
Yeah, he looks like the best value to me on DraftKings from Oklahoma City. He's
not saying much though.
Right. He's also a small forward on FanDuel, which is nice. But I would still put him, behind Burks, Culver, assuming Wiggins is out, and Paul George, who we haven't talked about yet. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said, he's not the highest ceiling guy because he doesn't rebound a ton. He doesn't get a lot of assists. He does have a 24% usage rate for the season, and he should play around 32 minutes here. So I think he's fine. I like him a little bit more than I like the salaries on any of the other OKC guys.
Okay. Let's get to an important game here. Dallas and Brooklyn. Kristaps Porzingis is out, yet the Dallas Mavericks are still 7.5-point favorites. 223 total in this game is the highest on this. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Second highest on the slate. Mavs 115.3 imply 107.8 for the Brooklyn Nets. Big thing here is, well, let's get to Luka first. And I want to give you a couple of things here, and then you can run with it. So the Brooklyn Nets, and you've mentioned this, they've played pretty solid defense. Not taking that away from them at all. But and this the chat the entire show has been going back and forth on what to do with Luka.
Join the club.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. A couple of things to point out, though. I won't get into his rates because we all know how ridiculous they are. But Brooklyn plays at a top 10 pace. But the one spot they've really struggled this year is against ball handlers in the pick and roll. And they've allowed the most points per possession to opposing ball handlers in the pick and roll and the most points as well. So why is that important? Doncic is fourth in pick and roll scoring this season. Third in pick and roll scoring and second in efficiency, 1.09 points per possession. So I think if there's one spot to really exploit them, he's a 46% frequency player in the pick and roll. It's a really, really appealing spot in that respect in a pace-up game.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm excited to talk about him just so I finally have somebody that I can say I really like. It's a pace-up game. It's like you said, they have struggled defending pick and roll this year, and more than any of that, even Luka's played 258 minutes without Kristaps Porzingis this year. 1.98 DraftKings points per minute, 40.7% usage rate, 20% rebounding percentage, 52.9% assist percentage. Just obviously doing even more without Porzingis on the floor. He played 40 minutes last game without Porzingis. I am projecting 34 here, but that is more to do with just trying to do everything I can to make sure I'm comfortable with my Luka projection than anything else. I'm trying to give kind of as much or factor in as much downside as I can, but very, very easily the top scorer on the slate for me. And it really just comes down to the question of, am I better off getting Luka plus a bunch of value I don't feel very good about, or going to mid-range guys? So far, it's looking like I'm taking the Luka route. And the reason for that is just that, as you've figured out and anyone watching the show has figured out, I don't really love the mid-range guys on this slate either. So the one thing I really, really love is Luka, and I'm leaning towards just kind of living or dying with him tonight.
I mean, he's averaging more than 2 fantasy points per minute with Porzingis off the floor.
Yeah, and also that was the site where it's a conversation is DraftKings. It's not a conversation on Yahoo. It's not a conversation on FanDuel.
Absolutely. And by what Adam's saying, in case anyone isn't clear, is play him there.
Right. The value is just so much better on Yahoo and on FanDuel.
So easy to get him. Yeah.
Right.
Dan McManus says, did this guy just say Brooklyn plays good defense? Bruh. Third best defensive rating over the last month. So yeah.
But Luffy, they were bad 2 years ago.
Right. Oh, I should have known. Yes. Right. And yeah, I mean, they have played good defense. I want to the whole Brunson thing. I mentioned to you, and I think we have differing opinions on this. But the whole Brunson thing, the ownership that he was getting earlier in the day, I thought was crazy. And the biggest reason for that was Tim Hardaway was out last game, and Brunson played 23 minutes. Even if I project him at 25, I don't get much. And the biggest point here is he played 20 of his 23 minutes alongside Luka Doncic. So if you say, oh, he's almost a per minute guy on the season, sure. Well, and I get that there is not a lot of value, so it's going to push ownership to Brunson. But he's a 0.69 fantasy point per minute player with Doncic on the floor this season. He played 20 of 23 minutes with him last game. 14% usage, 10.5% assists in 153 minutes with Doncic this season. That's a concern to me, even with Porzingis out. You play alongside Doncic as a guy that has done a decent job actually as a ball handler. Concerns the hell out of me. Now, you said you thought they were going to stagger the two, so I'm open to listen on that.
It's so they did it in the second half is the only thing that stood out to me,
For
but
3
it's
minutes.
not. Well, yeah, but those are the only 3 minutes that Luka didn't play.
Sure.
So I mean, it's not something that I'm super confident in. Basically, the way that I'm approaching this is I'm not confident in who Brunson plays with when he's on the floor. I'm not confident in exactly how many minutes he plays because, like you said, he played 23 last game. You had DeLon Wright and Seth Curry both close. I assume it's going to be a hot hand situation where one to three of those guys is on the floor to close, and we don't really know who it's going to be. So I'm kind of just trying to get Brunson's projection to a point where it is low enough where I don't think I'm clearly over projecting him. Like things can go where he scores higher, and it's high enough where I'm not just completely writing him off. So right now I have him at like 20.3 DraftKings points. I have 26 minutes. I have him at 0.78 DraftKings points per minute which accounts for, it being a pace up game and at least some of his minutes hopefully coming without Luka on the floor. What it ends up coming down to is that at 3,400, it's just really difficult for him to fail. If he were to start getting tons of ownership, like 40, 50%, I would start to dial back a little bit. But in our last update, we had about 24%. I think I got him in like 35% of my DraftKings lineups. That seems fine to me.
Okay. Sorry, I don't know how we ran this far behind. I guess you come back from the holidays and everything gets mixed up. Eddie and Spags are coming up next. So I got to burn through this, but Maxi Kleber, what are you doing with him? We got to be quick.
Yeah, better option on FanDuel, obviously. I have him for 32 minutes, but at 5,500 on DraftKings, that's not really getting me to much.
All right. What about Brooklyn?
I do want to mention that Boban probably plays like 12 to 14 minutes if that helps you out on DraftKings for value. As far as Brooklyn goes, not much on prioritizing on DraftKings. I think Dinwiddie and Allen both look fine. Nothing beyond them really looks very good. On FanDuel, you have a $5,600 Allen at power forward to add to the power forward value, though.
Okay. And people talking about Luka's sitting. I don't see why you would think Luka's sitting today. Chad is wild.
He's probable.
Yeah, I know.
FanDuel says he's a game time decision, but that's FanDuel.
What are your thoughts on Brooklyn?
Allen's really favorably priced on FanDuel at power forward. Dinwiddie and Allen are fine on DraftKings. Neither one stands out as like a priority, though.
All right. And then Kings in Memphis. I like Bjelica and De'Aaron Fox. Outside of that, I don't have anything. What are you doing with this game?
I'm not really high on Bjelica. I like Fox. I like Hield. I like
Bjelica not getting the center backup minutes, which kind of sucks.
Yeah. I like Fox. I like Hield. I like Holmes. The downside to Fox is that he actually is a good value on DraftKings, and so we haven't projected for a ton of ownership. There's enough guys around him that I don't know that I really want to eat that chalk. I could just get, Zach LaVine or guys like that. So he'll be ownership dependent for me, but he does look like one of the better point per dollar options.
Do you want to pay for Holmes?
He's okay. Like the way I'm going with roster construction, I probably won't pay for that much. But if I were to forego Luka and go balanced, I think that it is a pretty nice spot for the Sacramento guys against a Memphis team that is fourth in pace over the last month.
I don't have anything for Memphis. Maybe you do.
I have nothing for Memphis.
Okay. And then with the Clippers, Lou Williams is cheap. Kawhi's been playing 36 plus minutes in 3 straight games. A couple of them were blowouts. And then on the other side, Drummond, even in these monster blowouts, is still getting huge minutes. So go ahead, close this game out for us. Bruce Brown's questionable. He's been downright terrible. We got to get out, but I will let you hit on the rest of this game. Like I said, I like Kawhi a lot, particularly on DraftKings, but everywhere. I like Lou Williams on FanDuel and Yahoo the most. And then I still have no issues with Drummond, assuming Blake sits. He is doubtful.
Yeah, same boat for me. Kawhi and George both look really good. George, especially on FanDuel, because he's a $8,000 small forward, whereas Kawhi is at power forward where all the value is. But on DraftKings, they both look really good to me. Williams' salary is fine on FanDuel and Yahoo. One thing that I think that you should keep in mind with Lou and with Harrell is that the Clippers are finally staggering George and Leonard's minutes, which means that you have Kawhi on the floor now when Williams and Harrell are out there, which takes usage away. So I think that his falling price point is for good reason. As far as the Detroit side, yeah, Drummond's a good play. He's perfectly fine. Obviously, all his rates go up without Blake, but he is tough to get to with Luka, and I'm prioritizing Luka as of right now. Christian Wood, 28 minutes last game, I think would have played about 26 had he not gotten a couple of garbage time minutes.
25 and a half, yeah.
So he's okay. I don't feel very strongly about him one way or the other. Derrick Rose looks okay as well. If we got news that Bruce Brown's in, he's a good value on FanDuel.
Christian Wood on FanDuel is very cheap. I like him there. But on DraftKings, give me Marquise Chris over him. That'll do it for us. Hey, thanks for hanging out. As always, sorry for running a bit late. We had to squeeze these games in. But Eddie's got you in good hands. Spag's got you in good hands leading up to lock. Anything we missed, like maybe this Pat Beverly news, they will hit on that and take you up till 7. Hit the thumbs up if you enjoy the show. We appreciate it. It's the easiest way to help support us. Eddie, Spags coming up next. Thanks for watching the Deeper Dive presented by Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports.
Right, what's up, guys? We should be starting up now. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the awesemo.com live before lock show. I don't know if it's our first one of 2020. It's my first one of 2020, and that's what matters to me. But I'm Chris Spags, joined today. Unfortunately, the bar set a little high, but you know what? I think it's your time to shine on this side here. Your old pal EMAC is back, filling in for Eddie one more day. EMAC, welcome on board. Happy 2020 to you. And of course, hey, welcome to Live Before Lock.
Well, thank you. It's fun. We've been hitting a few of these with Eddie traveling. I've been got tap up on the big show here on the weekdays because, of course, I am on nearly every weekend with Fast Eddie on Saturdays and Sundays because we have you covered live before lock literally every day.
And you know what? It's a new year, and that means a lot of new opportunities, including some special deals that we have right now on the awesemo.com/join page. And one big one we want to bring to your attention right up front. We do have a deal right now where if you use the promo code 2020, that's 2020. It's a really low barrier for entry there. It'll give you $20 for 20 days of all access platinum at Awesemo Plus. So go use that promo code right now if you've been thinking about trying it out. Use that $20 you got from Santa Claus or Hanukkah Harry or whatever deity, the spaghetti monster, whatever you wanted to celebrate over the holidays. They gave you money. Go use some of that money right now at awesemo.com/join. We also have a big baller deal too going on right now. If you use the promo code New Year, you can get 20% off of a year of Awesemo Plus platinum package on there. So that one too, if you want to spend your money right now, you are going to be saving a lot. So if you want to get in for the full year of 2020, you can do that right now with the promo code New Year. But the promo code 2020, real easy one right there if you want to get in there. And EMAC, I know you play a ton of sports here, so what do you think the value proposition is? Because I know you play NHL, you play golf, you play everything. What is the value of a person right now if they just want to get in there for 20 days for $20? What are they getting at their fingertips?
I think it's literally off the charts. I have not missed an NHL slate since the beginning of playoffs last year. And I have not watched any NHL since the beginning of last year, but of the playoffs last year. But I utilize our projections, Alex's grades. What's phenomenal, he ranks the player lines, and in conjunction with the Fantasy Cruncher, you can just build your optimizers by stacking or your rules in your optimizer by stacking lines. And that means, line 1, 2, and 3 are even strength forward lines. And then you have power play lines, and you can designate what you want. You want 2 players off the line, 3 players if you only want forwards and centers, if you want to include defensive men, et cetera. And that's been something that actually is my most steady ROI. It's at about 15% right now for the whole year. So that's it's very nice and something that's helpful. And then the best part is the Slack chat, because they give me alerts when somebody has been scratched. They also update the line changes. More often than not, I'm on air, so I really can't focus on that. And oftentimes when you see hockey lines, oh my gosh, they changed the lines. Half the times the coaches change them back in game just because they're trying to spark somebody or do something different. So for those of you new to this or are worried about all of it, you can catch up rather quickly. And you're going to want to be on board when we get to the NBA playoff or All-Star break, because it's a full week this year of no NBA, unless you want to count the Rising Stars game and the NBA All-Star game, which we will have projections for.
It'll be XFL season by then, Emax. So that's what.
Oh.
I don't know what we're doing with that yet, but guys, I was looking up when the season starts. It's February 8th is when it kicks off. So I gotta start doing some research if we are going to do anything.
I played fantasy season-long XFL the first go-around.
Was there? I mean, I'm sure he hate me a valuable prospect back in those days of season.
Rod Smart, yes, very.
But no, I'm intrigued by this XFL season. I'm curious to see how it goes. But that is one of my plans to try to get somebody here to buy in on doing content for it. If we do have tournaments, but I think that's going to be a big question mark. But one other thing too, of course, if you are playing DFS in 2020, is our last plug, guys. I promise. It is going to be a very good idea for you to go to fantasydraft.com right now. Start your year the right way, which is just using your money a little bit smarter. Your bankroll is the most important thing to you. And one of the biggest killers to a person playing DFS, their bankroll is going to be how much break they lose to the house. On a lot of the popular sites out there, sites we love, they are charging you a good amount of rake, 10 to 15%, depending upon the tournament. Go to fantasydraft.com. All of the contest entry fees go right to the winners. So go to fantasydraft.com or download the Fantasy Draft right now, Fantasy Draft app right now in the app store of your choosing. Go check them out right now and use that promo code AWESOMO for your free 7-day trial. All right, so let's do a quick little breakdown here, Emac, of the top owned play on the day. And it looks like in the last round of ownership, it is still going to be Jalen Brunson. On DK in particular, he is a really good value. You need that value much more on DraftKings. On FanDuel, there are a lot cheaper guys, so Brunson is not as much of a consideration on that site. Even though he is cheaper priced, you just don't need him on that slate there. Same thing with Yahoo as well. So on DK in particular, Emac, Jalen Brunson, what are you doing with him? Should be starting again for Tim Hardaway, but we saw last game, he loses minutes to Seth Curry. He's not the most involved. It's not the same situation as it was with him when he was out there with no Luka. Luka takes away a ton of usage in this spot.
Yeah, and it's not even close. He's someone I won't have very much of, and that's a conscious decision here. Main reason on that is we talked here about. Oops, I almost dropped. I see Laffy talked about him. I haven't read Laffy's amazing article yet, but I've got the Cash Building Blocks article here, which is free. So I'm going to drop this into chat. So I want to explain sort of what we're talking about here and just spend a moment on this. So because we have some players here that I did not like yesterday, and I like those very same players today. That would be the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are coming in on a back-to-back. They're the only team on a back-to-back today. So in this article, I spent a lot of extra time writing it today because I wanted to talk about leverage plays, how different slates can happen or can change things, and as well as the pricing being different on the different sites. So the guys that I really went in depth on are some Minnesota guys, Christian Wood, and then Jalen Brunson. And I want to talk about this just from a high level. And if you guys want to read all the stuff into it, you can, because these were guys I've said good or bad things about in the last 7 days. I've now reversed position on them. This is not because their situations have changed. This is not because of their performance on the court. This is because our global overall situation has changed today. So with Christian Wood, main thing I said about him was, hey, he's, how many of you realize he's played for 4 different teams? He's been active in the NBA for 5 years. Sorry, I hope I said Wood, not Woods. Been active in the NBA for 5 years. 1 full league was spent in the G League in the middle of all of this. Did we really want to trust him? And I didn't really like his last matchup. So I said, he was probably not going to be a great player. Sure, put him in for your cash games, but you want to expect 20 to 25 fantasy points. Hey, that's like about what he got. I don't remember what it was off the top of my head. Today, I like him a little bit more. Why? Different team he's playing. He's going against the Clippers. The Clippers don't have a big behemoth like Rudy Gobert in the center spot here. So one, now he's not going to have to compete with Gobert and Drummond for rebounds. It's going to be with Montrezl Harrell or Ivica Zubac. So that's better opportunities for him. He's still going to have to battle Drummond, but it's a better situation. Additionally, we have a lot of other places that we can pivot to on some of these chalky plays. Last night I said, I'm not so sure about this Minnesota value place. Tough matchup going against against Milwaukee. And what was it yesterday? A 4-game slate. So everything was so concentrated. If you wanted to get level or leverage off of those guys, you didn't want to play them. How many of them did well? Like what? About none of them, of their true value guys. Well, today I'm okay with them. They did call up some extra guys from the G League. We don't have full information yet, but I'm not running away from those guys today like I was trying to yesterday, because we have a whole bunch of other choices. So if you eat what is good chalk, and I think it's okay with Christian Wood. Now it's different on DK or on FanDuel, but if you eat that chalk, we have plenty of places to differentiate tonight. And differentiation doesn't mean stupid, but if you have one or two really good 5% owned plays and the rest are relatively chalky, that's enough differentiation up as you get up near the top that you're going to be okay, and you're going to have some of those unique type of lineups that can take the whole thing down. When we get to Jalen Brunson, I don't want him anywhere. I think he's a bit of a disaster. He's 3,400 on DK. Loved him when Luka was out. Picked him up on my season-long teams and streamed him that week. Want no part of it now. Luka, we see what Luka does to Kristaps Porzingis when they're on the court together. Brunson doesn't have a chance. He's not going to be the primary ball handler. He's not going to get any rebounds. He's not going to get the scoring. And then, by the way, he didn't even close the last game. It was DeLon
Wright.
DeLon Wright. Thank you. I was going to get a Darren Williams reference in there. And
unfortunately, he is not available for the Mavs today, but if he were, he'd probably be an improvement there. But no, I'm with you on that. So I think the issue with Brunson is he's like a 0.65 fantasy point per minute player when he's sharing the court with Luka without Porzingis out there. Luka himself, he goes to a 50% usage rate almost and 2 fantasy points per minute. Just Luka does everything himself when there isn't Porzingis out there. And as Emac mentioned, Luka takes a lot away from Porzingis. Porzingis had some decent days recently, but his bigger ceiling days alongside Jalen Brunson when Luka weren't out there. So to me, I really am I'm more comfortable going to Seth Curry. I'm more comfortable going to DeLon Wright, as you mentioned. Curry, though, to me is the guy who I do think can get there. I think he can get a shot a little bit more as a vessel of Luka rather than just, getting his own shot. Should also see some court time without Luka in that second unit group. Not a ton. There's really not a ton of court time to go around without Luka. But I'd rather have Seth Curry, and I think I'd rather take stabs at DeLon Wright. The DraftKings price, we mentioned at the beginning of the show, there's just no value on DraftKings. So for that reason, I think it still makes sense to have some Brunson because he's going to open up a lot of different ways to build lineups, whether you have Luka or not. But it's just I don't expect him to get to 25 fantasy points. I think I'm building lineups with the expectation he's going to get me 20, and that might just be like the cap for him. And if that opens things up, great. But otherwise, I wouldn't have expectations for him. I think would be the main thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of our premium stock members are saying, oh, well, the Minnesota guys didn't kill you. No, but they didn't really help you either. 20 per guys. Where you got killed is if you didn't have Avery Bradley. Who knew he was going to have a ceiling game? And then if, like me, you went away from Giannis, thinking it was going to be a walk in the park. That game was far from a walk in the park against effectively a G League team. So weird stuff happens here. But I just wanted to point out people are going to hear the opposite takes on some of these things. And it's about leverage, it's about popularity, and it's about math, especially when it comes to the NBA, because it's one of our most projectable sports. That doesn't mean we know exactly what's going to happen, but it means minutes equals opportunity. As long as rotations and situations have not changed much, we kind of know what a reasonable range of outcomes is going to be for players. And
the deeper dive guys talked about this a little bit while ago, where Gary Harris apparently has a lot of friends and family for this game in Indiana, which is one of his hometown. I don't know if it's one of his hometowns, but definitely a place where he has a lot of friends and family. So he is officially in now, and there are some injuries we have to hit on throughout the course of the show, but just want to close the loop on the Mavs. So Luka Doncic, we talked about him, vis-a-vis Jalen Brunson. And as I mentioned, 2 fantasy points per minute. That is a legit number off about a 300-minute sample size without Porzingis this year. He's just a monster. We all know Luka's a monster, but we've kind of seen the floor a little bit more for him recently than the ceiling, other than last game. Like, he's been up and down a bit more. And I've found him to be a hard to project player just because he's been so efficient with every opportunity, where if he's not, the elite of elite with efficiency, he's not going to get there for me most days with his salary. But without Porzingis in there, he's just going to have so much usage where now he's back in the mix firmly for me. I would really find a hard time not playing him on FanDuel today. He's going to be 75% owned there. So some tournament reasons to not go there, but at his price point, it's just silly. But on DraftKings too, I have a ton of Luka, and he was a priority play for me. So EMAC, relative to all the sites, what are you doing with Luka tonight? Where is he a priority? Where is he not?
I think he's a priority across the board. I'm sure that I didn't get to catch all the deep dive earlier, but I'm sure they talked about raw points, what we're doing, etc. It's amazing to me on a slate where we have 18 teams in action that Luka Doncic is going to be on about 75% of the teams, on at least what we're projecting there on FanDuel. That's just crazy. In our syllabus, I have him as my favorite cash game play. Normally, I don't always go with the spendy guy. I was looking at Alec Burks, who I think is a fine option. But with the available discount dandies that are out there, or the value plays, you can get to Luka. So on my main lineup, I have him. I'll play him in the Fred Van Elite Fan Club contest, etc. I'll probably come in around where the field is on DraftKings, which is the side I'm playing on tonight, just because I want to try to differentiate elsewhere. I'm going to go a little bit heavier on the Minnesota Golden State game. So I want to see what we get with the news with the Minnesota guys. And then I like the later games there, Sacramento and Memphis, and then the Clippers in Detroit. So I'm kind of trading off Andre Drummond for Luka Doncic in my tournaments. That's a conscious decision I'm making, but I'm sure Luka is still probably going to end up on about 40% of my team. So I haven't looked at our most recent popularity or his popularity level or ownership, but I'm guessing that's about where it's going to be on DK.
Yeah, on DK in the last run of ownership we had, which again does come with that Awesemo Plus membership. And if you missed the intro, use that promo code 2020 right now to get 20 days of an all access premium membership. That's all the content, all the tools, all the data across every sport. Get that for 20 days for $20 right now. Just use that deal 2020 on awesemo.com/join. Get the ownership projections in front of you. But yeah, Luka's ownership on DraftKings has come up to just under 30%. To me, like that just seems low. I think 50 on DraftKings at that price point seems reasonable. And I'm actually a little bit above that. And on FanDuel, as we mentioned, just the price point there at 10.8 or 10.8K, $10,800, depending upon how you want to say numbers. The salary there is just too cheap. And I think Yahoo, to their credit, is kind of the mama bear here, where I think their price is a little bit closer to just right, but still it'll be the chalk play of the slate there as well. And really don't have an issue with him at 38%. I probably would go above that too. So just an interesting slate for Luka, but one that changes quite a bit without Porzingis, where if Porzingis were in, I would probably be moving very far away from Luka for the most part, or at least be under the field if there was going to be 30%. Without Porzingis in the mix, it's just a really, really good spot for Luka overall, which I'm not breaking any new ground there. Let's keep going through some of these chalk plays, EMAC, because we have some guys whose ownership have popped up a bit. And we talked about a little bit of Christian Wood, but another guy at his price point who's going to be really highly owned today looks like Marquise Chris. And he saw 34 minutes last game, going to benefit again from no Willie Cauley-Stein in the mix. And even if there is no Towns out, we do not have that news yet about Wiggins and Towns. Both those guys still questionable. If those guys are in or out.
All of that news just came out. All of the Wolves guys are out.
Oh, okay. So there we go. So they have 1 minute ago. So yeah, Travion Graham out, Jeff Teague out, which we expected. Andrew Wiggins officially out. Karl-Anthony Towns out. So I guess to close the loop on Chris, I would say for him, whether it's Deng in there or it's Towns, there is enough size in Minnesota where you're going to expect Chris to get those minutes. I don't see him getting subbed out. If he picks up fouls, which is always a risk for him, you'll see more minutes for Amari Spellman, but there has to be somebody of some size in there. So I'm not worried about Chris, but I guess let's pause the Chris talk, EMAC.
Sure.
Which is hard because I love anything Chris related, obviously. But T-Wolves, what are you doing now with the Wolves? Because everybody here is more in play. Shabazz Napier going to be a guy who's been shooting a ton recently. He already looked good with Teague expected to be out. I think now without the other guys in, I would want a lot of Napier. But also we've seen guys like Jarrett Culver. You talked about the Timberwolves chalk earlier, or the other peripheral Timberwolves. So what are you going to do with Minnesota now that we know everybody of relevance is out?
Sure, and I'm comfortable with this side because I wanted some players kind of coming back against the Golden State guys that I like. So the two Golden State guys that I like and I still like a lot are Alec Burks and Damian Lee. I think they're perfectly fine. We'll hit on Chris in just a second, and then we've got Glenn Robinson and Draymond Green. I've got thoughts on them. But if we focus just on the Minnesota guys, for me it's Shabazz Napier. Makes me very happy that Teague is out. And then the other guy is Gorgie Deng. So he's been very solid. This will be the 9th game that he has started. In the other 8 starts where he has replaced Karl-Anthony Towns, he's averaging 29.3 minutes and 34.3 fantasy points per game. In that time, he has 3 double-doubles And he also had, including, I think he had almost a 20 rebound game and I think a 14 or a 15 rebound game. He's had a few in the single digits, but he had a couple big ones there. And then he's averaging 2.6 combined blocks and steals. Those are all phenomenal. Oh, and wait for it, he'll take a couple 3-pointers per game, and he's actually not bad at making them. So that's just a little bit of a bonus, but it describes to you his athleticism and the range that he has, and just reminds us once again, how the hell have they not been playing him the last couple seasons? So really like Gorgui Dieng, even with the price up. If we look at Marquise Chris, I'm totally fine with him. His price has come up as well. The one thing that's changed this year for him as opposed to prior years is, one, he came out way too raw out of college. He was a one-and-done guy for the University of Washington. He was not ready to be in the NBA. He got drafted completely on potential, which then just was not realized because he was with Phoenix, and then he was packaged off to Houston. One thing he's done now with Golden State is his fouls per 36 are 4 per 36 this year. Last year, they were 5.8. So basically, he couldn't stay on the court. This year, it's better, but he has reasonable rebounding skills. And while he's not somebody that really gets offensive plays for him, he's competent at filling the lane, and he can also score in the paint, off garbage buckets and stuff like that. So he's perfectly fine in this one, but they're going to need his size for rebounding without Willie Cauley-Stein. If Willie Cauley-Stein was playing, I'd be even more excited about Willie Cauley-Stein than I am with Marquise Chris. So, but I think this is a reasonable spot for those guys. Glenn Robinson, I'm okay with. The price continues to keep ticking up, but he is someone that gets most of his fantasy points on scoring. This should be a faster paced game, not the best defense on either of these sides. They have improved from the beginning of the year, but they're no great shakes because we're missing so many of the key players. And then Draymond Green, I don't know what the hell to do with Draymond Green. Played him on Christmas, was confident he was actually going to try and do something. I don't really have motivation for him in Minnesota other than it's near Michigan. And didn't he go to Michigan State?
He did.
I'm stretching now. I mean, we said Indiana is the home, and Gary Harris actually was born and went to high school in Indiana, but he went to Michigan State as well. So
I mean, Draymond's motivation is just that they've been winning a little bit more, and I think he has shown some more motivation. I mean, he almost had a triple-double in that last game against San Antonio, which I think is the first time that he's actually gotten close to that range. He might have been around there in some really cake matchup recently, but I think just he feels probably a little more motivated by the fact that they had that 4-game win streak. They lost the last 2, so and maybe that does kind of ebb and flow as it goes. But I don't mind Draymond. I think really the price point is the issue there, where it's already kind of a tough slate to find value. And Draymond at almost 7K with the downside he has because he's not a high usage player, I think poses some risk. Also, just running through the projections real fast, since we did get them. You did already get an update from Osimo, so good job by the boss man getting in there right away. So if you are a premium member, go check them out right now. But it does look like Gorgui Dieng will be somebody I'll have in more lineups tonight. Naz Reid, too, I would also say on the cusp of usable value if we are digging real deep, because he's a guy who just shoots the ball the second that he comes in, which does seem, like it is a helpful skill set. One thing the deeper dive guys mentioned, too, which I do think is worth noting real fast, because EMAC ran through all the Golden State players. This Minnesota team without Towns in there, and I think without Wiggins, too, has been much better defensively. You could credit the guys a lot of different ways. I think you can credit the wing depth from a lot of guys like Culver, Okogie, these guys being in the mix, who are decent defenders. Covington as well, obviously one of the better defenders.
Sure as hell can't score. They might as well play defense.
Well, they just have so many wings who are like competent defenders and who are rangy and are athletic. So I think that's just going to make the defense better. But Gorgui Dieng, too, also a very good defensive player in the middle. I'm a guy who's had a better defensive rating than most of his teammates for a lot of the year, too. So I think there are ways that you can point to here where this spot's a little bit less appealing for Golden State now. Also kind of makes sense why their team total is down a little bit from Vegas. Just a 1-point drop, but I think we can see that trickle down a little more as we get closer to lock. So I'm a little bit less inclined to load up on Golden State players now because of this news, just because their prices are high enough here. Like Damian Lee's almost 7K. His rebounding can help him out. That's fine. Alec Burks going to get usage without D'Angelo Russell in the mix. But I would be a little bit more reluctant to have, 3 to 4 of these guys than I might have been earlier, where I think if you got Towns in, it's going to be a little bit looser. Wiggins as well. It's going to be a little looser, a little faster pace. And I think that's one important distinction for me.
Yeah, it does. For me, my two main guys are still Burks and Damian Lee. And again, that's a trade-off. If I'm not going with Luka, I can get a few of these mid-range guys, and it'll work out for me. So just to rank the guys in that game, those would be my first 2. Deng would be my third one. Napier would be my fourth one. And then after that, you're kind of in game stacking range if you're trying to get a fifth guy out of that. I mentioned don't hate Chris, don't hate a few of the peripheral guys there for Minnesota, but they're not in my core plays.
So we've gone through some of these games, some of the key games here and the key injury news, and there's still some more waiting. Detroit, we are waiting for news on there. Bruce Brown is questionable. If he's in, he's going to be a viable play on his own as a decent value, even though he's had a couple of mediocre games recently. If he's out, it's going to change the equation for those guys a bit more. We are not expecting Blake Griffin to play. I think he's still doubtful, but he's probably not playing. Markieff Morris officially out. So we know the big situation that Emac talked about earlier with Christian Wood and Drummond. But the guards here can be affected by that news. So we'll update if we get that Bruce Brown news throughout the hour.
What's the name of the guard that benefits?
I think it would be Svi would benefit a little bit. Svi would benefit. Yes. Your enthusiasm, contagious in the new year. Svi and Bruce Brown would benefit. Tim Frazier as well, popping a little bit for me in projections. Langston Galloway, a guy that Osmo talked about in his premium game plan video earlier. So there's certainly some guys there who can be value, who would benefit, if we do not know if Bruce Brown is going to be in. I got this slack from Josh that made me laugh. But Emac, the Pistons, what are you doing with them right now in absence of this news? And what are you doing with Svi? I'm not going to do that noise. That was a terrible noise.
No, that's my Geico commercial. I said this last time. Chat's like, what the hell is this guy talking about? No, I was just trying to see if I could make Chris laugh. So not overly, so a little disappointed in the results we've seen recently from Montrezl Harrell. Not as thrilled with what we're getting from Detroit. For me, it's kind of a definite Andre Drummond. I'm okay with Brown, or pardon me, Chris Wood, as we mentioned prior to that. I'm sort of ambivalent on the guard situation here. You would like to think that with Kennard out, Reggie Jackson still perpetually out, et cetera, some of these guys would pop a little more. Not really. I'm sad that Patrick Beverley's out. He's someone I did like. Or would have liked in this game at his current price point. But you're sort of left with the question being, so even if all the Detroit guys are in, how close are they going to keep it with the Clippers, who we've seen just demolish other teams? They're favored by a dozen at home.
Especially at home, yeah.
And that's a little tricky. We've seen Andre Drummond continue to get minutes in the mid-30s, regardless of what's going on. With regards to the overall score and what's happening to Detroit. So I'm not as concerned about him, but I need some guys to get extra minutes on either if I'm going with Kawhi and Paul George, who I think are reasonably priced on FanDuel and DraftKings and even Yahoo. If I'm going with those guys, I need them to not lose 3 or 4 minutes. If I want to go with Harrell the way he's been playing, if I want to go with Lou Williams, I really need those other guys to lose minutes because they have continued to play and muck up the rotation. So it's not been as clean and pristine. And I believe Adams talked about this on some of the strategy shows with Harrell and Williams getting that pick and roll run with the other two guys off the court, et cetera. They're running the second unit and they're part of the closing unit, but they get that extra stuff. That's been encroached upon by Leonard and George. So things have changed if you go look at the last 10, 12 games as opposed to the entire season or chunking out the first half there. So while I'm more intrigued in this one, I would like at least one guy from this game on most of my lineups, but I don't really know where to pinpoint it outside of Drummond. So even if Bruce Brown were out, I'm not, other than making fun of his name or having fun with his name, I'm not really excited about Svi. There's really no wings you want to go to. I'm okay with Christian Wood. And then it's sort of a sprinkling of there's about 6 guys I think are reasonable on the Clippers, but I have no idea which ones are good or which ones will do better than their counterparts. And that's what makes it a little bit tougher here.
The Clippers side in particular, with Beverly out, I feel like the guy, and I've tried to, I think a couple of weeks ago, tried to figure out if anybody's really going to gain anything materially there. And Terrence Mann does get some more minutes generally. He did at least last game with Lou Williams out. But I would think, for me with the Clippers, the thing that you see the biggest boost in without having Beverly in the mix is just more assists from Paul George. His assist rate does jump up. He had bigger upside, almost had a triple-double in that last game. So Paul George, I would think, would benefit a little bit more than trying to parse out Clippers guys from the injuries going on there. But the Pistons, I do think Svi's playable. I do think Tim Frazier's playable. If Brown is out, I do think that those guys, I don't mind mixing a little bit. Langston Galloway as well. Like, I think just having a 3-man rotation of those guys is value. Not loading up a ton, but I do think that those 3 in particular would be the ones I would expect to benefit if we don't get Bruce Brown. But we'll update on that news as we go if it comes.
I believe the boss man, was it the boss man? Yes. So a little taste of one of our offerings. Top contrarian play and why. Alex says if Bruce Brown is out, he would be interested in Langston Galloway. Here's why. He hasn't been playing many minutes lately. He feels he's going to be very, very low owned, and he could get close to 30 minutes or into the 30s for minutes, because we know that Galloway, I mean, he's very versatile, combo guard, can defend people, et cetera, et cetera. So once he gets on the court, if there's no one to come in and replace him, he'll stay on the court because he can do whatever they need him to do. He can slide between the guard spots. He's decent on defense, and he doesn't, he'll look to pass, which, hey, that works out. So why is the coach going to get mad at that? So I thought that was an interesting contrarian play. We could see him get a fantasy point per minute. All of a sudden you got 30 fantasy points. And if that happens and hardly anyone has him, he could do better than the Minnesota guys. He could do better, fill in the blank, the Jalen Brunsons of the world, et cetera. That's where you get that low owned unique player that we're talking about that can really differentiate your lineup. So that's an intriguing one he put in there.
And Morgan Smith asking a question in the premium Slack, which I guess we can close the loop on the Timberwolves real fast because we didn't do this one. How many Timberwolves would you find to be optimal, EMAC? Because to me, I think I don't foresee myself having more than 3 on this slate.
I wouldn't go over 3. And ideally 2 of those would be Gorgie Jang and Napier. And then
To me, Napier is closer to a priority.
Yes.
Jang, I feel like at center, there are some other ways you can go. There are some guys you can pay down for, some guys you can pay up for.
Mm-hmm.
So he would be a little bit less of a priority for me. But as EMAC mentioned earlier, his price is still playable. But I think to me, I don't think Minnesota is like a bum rush to get, or a gold rush rather, to get to that team. I think, if you get a few of them, but I would just really emphasize getting Napier in your lineups. And if you want to pay $5K for Jarrett Culver, go for it, but just wouldn't do that like crazy.
Cool MOD, Wild Wild West. Break out before you get bum rushed. That was from New York. That's your stomping grounds.
That was, I think, before I was born, but
probably
was indeed. Let's go through EMAC. I want to talk about one game that I feel like isn't being missed ownership wise, but it is one that I don't like. It seems like it could be even chalkier than it is. Sacramento at Memphis. So I do like playing teams against Memphis quite a bit. They play with pretty high pace. They also play with pretty poor defense. 2 things that I generally like to advocate for going against with most teams. Sacramento, a frustrating team because offensively they just don't perform that well. On the year, they have a 104 offensive rating, which is really not that good, especially for a team that has as many shooters and guys who can get buckets like they do. They just don't function well together. Their shots overall in the year is not hitting as much as you would think they would, especially guys like Buddy Hield. But then the spot, EMAC, I like all these guys a lot. I like Fox. I like Hield. I even don't mind Harrison Barnes, Holmesby, Elitza. I think there are a lot of guys who are in play for me today. Bogdanovich, a lower priority guy, but still very much in the mix for me. What are you doing with Sacramento today? Do you trust these, particularly the chalky kings like Buddy Hield and Fox, who are going to be owned? We've talked a lot about Hield on the show. And of course, he broke out after a slump after I advocated for him and mentioned how he's murdered my lineup so many times. Been doing well, getting more assists, more rebounds, and shooting slightly better than usual. What are you getting on the Kings side here, or Memphis side? But how are you feeling about this game overall? Because it has the highest combined total on the slate right now, or at least like just behind the Detroit Clippers game.
So that was one of the things that took me a while to write my article today, as I was trying to look into this one as compared to the Golden State and Timberwolves article, because I was looking to see, I like the pace of the games. I like the opportunities for the lesser players if certain key people are out. We know that Bagley's going to be out for a couple more weeks, it sounds like. So we know, like 2, maybe 3. We know what happens to the Kings when he's out. With Memphis, I don't really know what I want. That's what makes it hard. So I'm just going to filter on them for a second. So I thought DeAnthony Melton was interesting, but if I'm going to say less than stellar things about Jalen Brunson, I should say those exact same things about DeAnthony Melton. Ja Morant hasn't quite realized a good game. He has topped 30 fantasy points once in his last 6. That's not very exciting. Sacramento is actually relatively decent on defense. So I'm running out of guys there that I think are even remotely interesting from this side. I guess we could look at Jonas Valanciunas, who can beast out at any point in time and get to that 40 fantasy point plateau. Do you like him or do you like Gorgie Dang? That's kind of a decision point you have there. If I look at the Sacramento side, I'm a little more interested in this. They get the faster paced team that they're going against. They have De'Aaron Fox. Ideally, if his back is okay, he's reasonably priced. Could he make a foray into 40 fantasy points? I feel pretty confident about that tonight. Do I see him getting over 50? not really confident at that at all. So I thought about making him a featured person until I ultimately just went back to Alec Burks and Damian Lee. Bielitsa, I think he's adequate, but his price has popped up. I don't have FanDuel up, but I think he's reasonably priced over there on FanDuel. He's not getting the backup center minutes at the moment. That could change at any given time with Luke Walton, because I don't think Luke Walton knows what he wants to do. Bojan Bogdanovic is kind of interesting. He's had moments. He's been hurt all season. I think he gets the minutes, but will he take the shots? That's a problem. We watched him drop some approach 40 fantasy points a couple times here, but it's because he was just gunning. So here's his last 4 games for shot attempts: 7, 8, 12, 28. I would like it to be closer to 17 than I would in single digits. So I'm not as thrilled with him. Harry Giles, Kojo, not worth it. But I think Fox, I think Hield, and I think Holmes are all legitimate. But I really don't want more than one guy, maybe 2 on a lineup, which is sad because this is a great matchup. Coming back on the other side, I don't really feel that great about any of the other guys. So here we have a great score, or projected score, nice matchup, nobody overly priced, but you've got a whole lot of meh, and nobody really doing great over their last few games. Now that doesn't indicate they're going to do good or poorly tonight, but damn, I want something to hang my hat on, and I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think for me, I agree with your take on having a mix of these guys. I'm more willing to go to 2 and honestly 3 in a lineup, just because I don't think people will do that with the Kings. As I mentioned, we are going to have ownership for Hield. We are going to have ownership for Fox. We're going to have a little bit for Bielitsa, but more so for Hield and Fox. So I do think getting to both those guys, I don't think they draw away from each other. I think if anything, like Fox does give Hield some more opportunities. Takes a little bit away on the assist side, but does give him better looks and draw some defensive attention away as well. So I don't mind going to both guys. And I just feel like Harrison Barnes in particular is one guy. I never want to be really above the field on him, but to me, he looks like one of the better value plays on the slate on DraftKings.
I can't even say his name.
I mean, like, he will murder a lineup. He has
no part of it.
Yeah, I get it. He's got
unregistered
0.75 fantasy points per minute for Barnes overall, I think, this year. But he's in the mix. He's still shooting 12 times a game. Like, it is a paceful matchup against Memphis, and one where I do think Barnes can get there. So I'm not dying for it. I'm not thrilled that I have as much of him as I do, but I do think on a slate in some need of value at the position he's at, Barnes is a guy that I'll be above the 7% on and pray. He has those random 45 fantasy point days. This could be it, EMAC. I could be on the right side of history once again.
You know what? You very well could be.
And that's also, too, Jeremy Savage in the YouTube chat saying, Harrison Barnes, I'm out, LOL. Like, fair point. That's his EMAC's reaction is the reaction most people have, but that's why you got to play these guys sometimes. And unfortunately, this matchup is one that for Barnes can be good. And if you went to him, too, without Hield or without Fox, maybe he scores big today. You just don't know with this Kings team. And as EMAC mentioned, the Kings team is still searching for an identity, but still doing things and still has a chance to score a lot of points here. EMAC, how about the Brooklyn side of the Dallas game? Because this is one where there really aren't a lot of obvious guys. And I just saw a question in the Slack, which went away, but are you getting any of Brooklyn at all on this spot? Because people are going to be loading up on Dallas. We talked about Doncic. We talked about Brunson being highly owned and some of the pivots there. Are you getting anybody on Brooklyn, like maybe a very contrarian Spencer Dinwiddie?
If I got anybody, I'm going to have to push. I'm going through and setting my individual player exposures right now. I just did our most recent upload, so that's what I'm looking at, gamers. So when I push the button, I can get it where I need it to be. But if we're looking here at Brooklyn, let's see. I guess I don't mind Joe Harris at any point in time. He is usually reasonably priced. If his shot is falling, he does get the minutes. So if his shot is falling, he's adequate. He doesn't do, he can luck into a handful of rebounds from time to time, but he doesn't get assists or steals. I think at one point he went like 8 games this season without a steal. That's not great. He also went to high school where their graduating senior class was about 90 people. So small school. Shout out. Lake Chelan, Washington. Go Billy Goats. So he's okay. Wilson Chandler coming back mucks with everything because he's taken 20 minutes out of the rotation. So that's a bit of a mess. Taurean Prince has not really established himself. He's sort of up and down and untrustworthy. Theo Pinson has had a resurgence here and there where he's back in the rotation, I think, but I'm not entirely sure because God only knows. So for me, it's Jared Allen, Joe Harris, Spencer Dinwiddie. Ooh, DeAndre Jordan. feels like he's familiar with this opponent and city.
Yeah. What would you say? A remember me game?
A remember me game. Yes, Chris. Yes.
It is a remember me game for DeAndre Jordan. Technically a 2-time one because they did recruit him that one summer where he then got held hostage by his Clippers teammates and didn't sign. But yeah, it is a spot here where Dinwiddie to me is the obvious guy that I'd want to, if I were going to run it back at all, would run it back with. But I do think Allen, I agree, is a pretty decent play. The price is up. So yeah, Jordan as a value play, certainly in the mix, but I really wouldn't view any broken guys as a priority and not necessarily feel like they need to be run back. Also, Elroy Jenkins in the premium Slack asking, with Porzingis out, do you have a preference on DK between Kleber and Powell? I ended up with less Kleber than I thought I would, just because the per minute numbers weren't as solid as I thought they were. We saw him have a big day last time out, taking those Porzingis minutes. I don't mind Kleber. I think I have slightly more Kleber than Powell, but didn't get a lot of either. Emac, would you have a lean there between Kleber and Powell on DK?
I'm gonna have to say it's Powell. I think Powell has the better chance to get over 20. I think Kleber has the better chance to get over 30, but that's rarely going to happen. It was interesting that they started both of them. Do we know if they're starting both of them together again?
We don't know yet,
right,
but I would assume they would because I don't see anything that changed materially.
Yeah, I don't think that would be much of a difference. So for this side, other than the non-Luka category, I just set Jalen Brunson to 15%. I want to make sure I come in under the field on DK. For DeLon Wright, I'm going to go over the field. I'm going to put him at 20. I want to make sure he is in my lineup, so I'm going to give him 25 fantasy points. This is a quick way of doing this in the optimizer, since remember, don't re-upload this stuff because it's going to override any of your changes, but this is the quick one to do. I do want some Maxi Kleber, so I'm going to put him at 10%. I'm going to put him at 25.5 points, 27.5 points, so he comes in a little bit. It's kind of at my break-even 5 point, but Dwight Powell I've put in at 30 and I've put in at 20%. So I'm going to get some Dwight Powell tonight. I think it's a way to force yourself to have some different lineups that aren't going with the Drummond and aren't going with Gorgie Dang. I'm curious to see how many lineups he does end up on with that thing. If he caps out, I'll probably back it down just a little bit, but I want to see where it lands before I fully throttle that back.
And our guy McCod points out we did just get an ownership update on the site as well. So if you are a premium member, that's in there now with one more run here. If you're trying to get your final crunches in like EMAC and many of the people watching right now could do that.
Well, I have to build my Fred Van Vliet team.
I
like to have a fighting chance. We didn't project him very well today. We projected it. Now he's going against Miami. We have him for 38 fantasy points. He has his last few games, he got 35 against Cleveland in 30 minutes, 38 minutes against OKC, 39 fantasy points, 37 minutes, 42 fantasy points against Boston. So I need to get him into these lineups, but I think he's okay to get in a few others. So I'll put him at 40 fantasy points and 10%, see where I get with him. But that's be glad you don't have to play him at this price point today.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like the Fred Van Elite game is less fun. Of course, if you're not familiar, EMAC does a tournament on DraftKings, which we run through our Awesemo thing there. EMAC, how do they get in there if they wanted to play in that tournament?
Excellent. I have my pinned tweet, so let me drop that in Slack real quick, or into the YouTube chat. So what I've got here is you need to join the Awesemo DK League. So we run this every time Fred Van Vliet plays on the main slate. We ran it all through the playoffs last year for showdowns. I have to play him no matter what, unless he's ruled out. If he's ruled out, then I get his direct backup. But otherwise, I'm rolling with him. So last year, he was not ruled out a few times as doubtful and then did not play, even though he was never officially ruled out. I took a 0. So that's how that works. If you win this contest, when it's run, with an Awesemo avatar, you reach out to me on Twitter, or if you're already a member in Slack, and I will get you 30 free days of Awesemo premium content, all access. That's not sports specific. It's all access, but you get 30 days there. So if you want to lock it in, you can use the promo code 2020 and get 20 days for $20. Or you can take your chance on the Fred Van Elite contest, which is already full for the day. But you want to sign up and join that. So when you post it, you'll get a little notification. Or when I post it, you'll get a little notification. You guys can jump in. But that's how it works. It started as a fun little joke, but now it has grown and it has become quite popular. And of course, when Fred Van Elite is not so elite, people get to make fun of me in Slack.
There you go. Yeah, it is an interesting little wrinkle there for a game. So go check that out. That is why EMAC has a special affinity for Fred Van Vliet and where he is in the world. It's not just because he loves his Pitbull style defense that he brings. let's talk about one game here that I feel like we haven't hit on at all, but I feel like I saw you talk about Slack, or maybe it was in the syllabus, but there's one guy who I'm intrigued by that I think you are too. Devontae Graham in this spot where he's priced up against Cleveland. Didn't have a good game against them a couple weeks ago, but he's a player where he really can fill it up when his shot's falling. Also, the assist upside is there from in every game. Cleveland's defense is so bad, and I feel like people do run away from the game with Cleveland for reasons that don't fully make sense to me. I know they're a slow-paced team, but their defensive rating of 112.4 is as bad as Washington for the most part. Like, it's in the hunt. I mean, it's a negligible difference between the two. People love targeting Washington because of the pace, but reality is you could be as efficient in a lower-paced game and have the same opportunity, especially if you're a lead ball handler. So I like Graham quite a bit, and I tried to get above the field on him. I forced my way to get above the field on him. So I'm now 3 times the field on him overall with the projected 7% ownership we have for him on DK. Are you getting Graham at all, Rozier? Are you getting any of these Hornets players? Because it seems to me like a spot in Cleveland where none of these guys have ownership. This game could definitely have some scoring, especially for the Charlotte side.
No, I think I wrote something that along the lines. I think I was answering a question in Slack, and I said I have an irrational love for all things Devontae.
That might have been what I saw, yeah.
Yeah. So I like him in most situations. He's just been phenomenal as a rookie. Tonight's game, going back the other way, I think Kevin Love's intriguing. They have a back-to-back Saturday and Sunday. So if he's not going to play one of the games, it's going to be one of those. But I would suspect if he gets 30 minutes tonight, he would be a guy who can hit 50 fantasy points. That's what I wrote in the syllabus today. And then I went and looked to see if these teams had played together. They had. He got 30 minutes and 50 fantasy points. Who knew? There you go. Bias confirmed. But I just think going against the matchup, he's okay. With regards to Graham, I like him in any situation. I think this is a nice spot for some of the Charlotte guys. But I'm looking at the other things I've got going on with my lineups, and I'm just ending up with other guys in other spots. And we have 18 teams tonight. At some point, you're going to have to cut bait on some of them. Oh, I do want to mention that I think TJ McConnell, we know that Brogdon's out. I think TJ McConnell is yet another pivot away from the Jalen Brunson Minnesota crowd. And I don't hate it. Not the best matchup there against Denver, but at least it's not in the Pepsi Center. So this one's at home. So I think it's a little bit better.
We got a super chat from Fareed Kassam asking Snickers or Almond Joy, and is K Porter a mistake? I actually got Porter with Osmo's projections today. And
can you see my screen?
I cannot, but not yet, please.
I have an Almond Joy randomly. Leftover Halloween candy.
Don't he, Mac?
Not my favorite, but it was leftover Halloween candy, and I wanted some chocolate, so I had one today.
I see you're starting the new year on a healthy foot.
Well, there's coconut, right? That's like a healthy something or other.
That's right, because there's coconut in both of them. Because Almond Joy's got nuts, Mounds don't.
Mounds don't, which doesn't make sense. Because if it's a mound, wouldn't you figure the mound has the nut on it? And
I would agree. That's more mound-like, yeah. But it's more of, I guess it's a mound of coconut then inside the chocolate. This is also, by the way, a very dated reference. I feel like that commercial hasn't been on since I was like a little child.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know that one's been around for a while.
But that's one of the songs that always pops in my head jingle-wise, like, Almond Joy's got nuts, Mounds don't. Because sometimes you feel like a nut, and sometimes sometimes you don't feel like
sometimes you don't.
We also didn't touch on one item. Oh, we got other news. Garrett Temple's out. I don't think that changes much, though. I guess you mentioning Theo Pinson maybe a little more relevant. But Garrett Temple being out certainly going to open some more shots on the wing. I would think you just consolidate usage a bit more between Taurean Prince, Joe Harris, and Jarrett Allen or DeAndre Jordan, whoever's in the mix there at center. Not a spot where I think it gives you a lot of upside to go there, but it does definitely open up some opportunity for, I would think, Harris and Prince in particular, and possibly Pinson. But EMAC confirm any interest here because of
no, but apparently my main lineup tonight is going to have Kevin Porter Jr. So there is a Cleveland Cavalier going against Charlotte.
Okay,
I would like to point that out. And this lineup I don't like it, but it does have Zvi in it. I guess I will have to accept that for the time being.
Yeah, that's
time is not my friend, so I've got to get these in and then make the bulk of my lineup. So if you're in the Fred Van Elite fan club or you're playing me in quote cash games, those are some of the players you're going to see. I've got not in cash games because I'm not going to play Fred Van Elite in cash games. We'll go fix that. That'll take care of the Zvi problem as well. But in that lineup, Burks, Chris, Dang, Napier, Drummond. With Van Vliet. So the core guys I've been talking about and saying I like a lot, those are the ones that are ending up in that one. So just want to point that out.
Yeah, and also I guess another note, which I don't think it was relevant because I'm pretty sure he's hurt, but David Nwaba is being waived by the Nets. So if you were thinking, oh, there's minutes on the wing, maybe David Nwaba will come back in. He is not going to be coming in. And that makes me sad. David Nwaba is one of the guys who I feel like has done randomly well for me as like a value guy when he was both a bull and I think once or twice as a net. And I hope he lands on his feet. I like David Nwaba. Anything else we haven't hit on EMAC that you feel like is important to bring to the people? You went to TJ McConnell. Obviously, that's a spot. I guess one that we didn't talk about at all, Rudy Gobert's a guy forced in a little bit. His price is stupid, so he's not going to come up in projections, but one of the best center matchups according to DVP against the Bulls. And that's not something you normally look at, but for centers, it is a better tell of what's going to go on. Bulls also miss a ton of shots. Gobert going to be doing some defensive things as well, going to be blocking a lot of the guys who are attacking the rim. So I like Gobert in this spot, but any thoughts on Gobert, EMAC, or anything we haven't hit on do you think is worth bringing to the people?
Gobert I'm just a little bit tepid on. Main reason being he's, not the most interesting of matchups for him. Chicago playing a little bit better, or defensively, but I just like so many other options tonight. Gobert is someone that I do look to a fair amount because you can almost pen him in for 40 fantasy points. Especially in a start like this. But if they're up by 15 or 20, what are the odds that he gets extra run at some point? Because Utah's headed out on a road trip here.
Also, it's worth noting, just to clarify something I just talked about off the top of my head, but Alex gave a lot more minutes. He gave some minutes more to Theo Pinson, but gave more to Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot for Brooklyn without Garrett Temple in. And Luwawu-Cabarrot has been productive occasionally when getting the extra minutes of run there, but just something to note that, I guess if you're looking for value and you want to go to some weird guys, going to Timothy might be a move today to get you some more value. Let's see. Anything at all for you in the Oklahoma City San Antonio game? Because this is one we haven't talked about at all. I really only got Gallo because him being back in the lineup, I think, is just being overlooked. His price is pretty low for having missed those few games. San Antonio does give up some decent production on the wing and does give up some clean looks. I think that's kind of the time where I don't mind going to Gallo. But anything in this game at all for you?
Literally none.
Okay.
Yeah. I literally have no interest in it, which is just because the people are back. It's a tougher matchup there for Aldridge. Who the hell knows what's going on with DeRozan? You've got the four guards. They all take turns having good games. I don't know where the minutes are going for them for the Spurs with any certainty. Occasionally, Marco Bellinelli still pops up every now and then in games. Who knows why? So not really excited there. And then with everybody mostly healthy again, for the Thunder, it's a little tougher now. San Antonio's defense has gotten a little bit better over their last 15 games than what it's been the entire season, but it's not enough to it's not bad enough still for me to say, oh yeah, roll with the guards from the Thunder, because those would be the three I'd be interested in, but they're all kind of priced up a little higher than what I would like. So this is just a game where it's not that exciting for me.
Okay, that makes sense. Also, just to clarify one point in the YouTube chat, because somebody's saying that Alex's projections are high on Jordan Bell. I wouldn't say they're high on them necessarily. They're high on a value basis. They're not the highest in terms of his raw points projection. Still would be projected for, I think we have him on, under 17 points according to DK points. So
did they come back down a little bit? If you haven't refreshed, they were 18 earlier. So
okay, so yeah,
he is popping. This is where you want to set individual player caps, because I'm looking at him right now, and he's showing up in my I don't like my cash game lineup here. This is why I shouldn't do this on air.
It's hard building lineups on air. People, I complain about that sporadically, but it is more difficult than people get.
Yeah, whatevs. We're rolling with it. So if you picked up some of my games, because I do write the Cash Building Blocks article, so I want to test this out. So here we go. We got Luka, Damian Lee, Drummond, Burks, DeLon Wright, TJ McConnell. It's not a horrible team until you start talking about Tim Frazier and Jordan Bell. So we'll find out with Jordan Bell. I don't want Jordan Bell.
Jordan Bell, to me, just a guy, if you're not going to be projected for 20 fantasy points, and there's I guess a route where he gets more minutes, which involves probably Jang foul trouble, or I guess really just foul trouble. I don't see the way that he gets there in a meaningful way. But if you just want pure value, he is the minimum price and does project well in that respect. But yeah, just not one that I would load up on. All right. Got one question in the premium Slack here from Dadler40 on FanDuel. Would you go Wood or Powell if you were playing Drummond? I think I would still go Wood, EMAC, but do you have a lean there?
I would still go Wood.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. Anything else good here? No good questions. Looking for take some either ors too. We've got just 2 minutes left to lock, so get that stuff in right now. Get all your lineups in, ladies and gentlemen out there. People don't like your cash game lineup, but they appreciate your candor about it.
Hey, this is what happens. I don't like it either. do I muck around with that where I have in 10% of my funds in play, or do I worry about my tournament teams that I haven't uploaded yet? I'm going to worry about my tournament teams.
MC Grazza needs a cheap utility on Yahoo. Do you go Zubac, Kleber, Culver, or Wood? I think I would still go Wood there.
I would go Wood, Kleber, and then Zubac. I went and looked to see where I thought Zubac was going to end up or how he would fare against Drummond. And size-wise, he's about the same height, but he's given up 50 pounds. But when you compare it to him and Harrell, Harrell's giving up like 8 inches and 60 pounds. So I didn't know what to do with that information, but I looked at it. It just didn't seem actionable.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's see. Last couple questions here. Aldridge or Holmes for a DK GPP? Elroy Jenkins asks. Man, it's got to be Aldridge, but it's really closer than you would think. So, but yeah, I think it'd be Aldridge still.
I think I'd still stay with Aldridge just because he does have the opportunity to take a ton of shots in the paint. It's not the best going against Steven Adams, but we have seen him score throughout his career 40 regular points, even in difficult situations, all 2-pointers, but it is possible.
Yeah, definitely not a play that I would be the most confident in the world, but to choose between those two guys, but they're both solid enough. All right, let's see. Anything in the YouTube chat? We are locked now. I'm just seeing if we got anything good.
No!
Oh, here we go. I'm authentic.
That's the sound of joy. Damn it!
I'm authentic 810 2010 saying Barnes bounce back night. Yes, I agree. I hope so. Eric Herstein asking, there's a premium chat. We're going to do a quick round of Daddy Likes, but he's asking, there's a premium chat. Well, there is, in fact, Eric. There is a premium chat right now. If you use the promo code 2020 on osmo.com/join, you get yourself the first 20 days of free of 2020, or just 20 days from whenever you sign up. But it's all for $20 right now. Did I say for free? I might have said for free. But anyway, it's for $20. 20 days for $20 right now. If you go to osmo.com/join, use that promo code 2020 on osmo.com/join. Get that New Year's deal in for yourself. Get access to the premium Slack, all of Alex's projections, the data, the boom bust tool, a million different things that you need to make better lineups. Deeper dive column every day, or the deep dive column every day. So go check it out right now at osmo.com/join with that promo code 2020. And let's see what the ownership. I should have been pulling this up while I was doing it. That would have been smart.
All right, now here's my little get out of jail free card. It looks like, fortunately, I ended up with I had forgotten to download after I registered for some more comments, but the only player I have locked is TJ McConnell. And so I can get out of this because Charlotte and Cleveland, I'm not really missing anything there. I wish I would have gotten some Kevin Love on my teams. I did.
Are you talking about your cash lineup or in general?
No, in general, because I had downloaded some more. Well, my cash lineup, I don't think I have anybody in the Charlotte Cleveland game or Denver or Indiana, unless I ended up with that TJ McConnell. I think I did end up with TJ McConnell. So I'm just saying you have a 7:30 game, Toronto and Miami, but if you're on the late swap sites, you can buy yourself some time here. I should have looked ahead and realized that these were all crappy games and just gone in with an 8 o'clock only slate or lineups, but that's okay. I can still, with the late swap optimizer and all of that stuff, fix these things.
Let's do a quick round of Daddy Likes. And because I didn't do this plug, Daddy Likes today is presented by Fantasy Draft because they are the official sponsor of Live Before Lock. And I forgot to give them a plug just a second ago. So now they're getting that plug right now. But go check them out right now. The official home of Rake-Free DFS. And they are the presenting sponsor of today's edition of Daddy or Uncle or Grandpa EMAC and Uncle Spags. Pappy EMAC. Sorry, EMAC. It's a new year. I shouldn't be a jerk. Youthful EMAC. That's
your older pal EMAC.
We're all getting slightly older by the year, my friend. I feel it every day. I feel it. Did a tricep workout today and my elbow hurt, and I was like, "Fuck, man, this is bullshit." That's not a thing. My elbows should be fine. Why should your elbow be in pain? I didn't do anything. But this round of Daddy Likes here, as EMAC mentioned, 2 games locked here. Top owned play of the slate, which I just hinted at by saying the wrong thing. EMAC, who would you say is the top owned play of the $15 tournament on DK? I feel like it's the fadeaway again.
Oh, let me. I'm just calling up the schedule here, not looking at anything else. Will it be Charlotte, Cleveland, Indiana, or Denver? It is going to be Indiana, and it's going to be a guard. It's going to be Aaron Holiday.
It is, in fact, your guard of choice, CJ McConnell.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It's still not bad ownership for you for this slate. I mean, 15% on TJ. I feel like that feels pretty right. I
would have guessed about 17.
Yeah. I think that's in the range. Under 20.
A lot of teams in play. So that it's better to play less of these games, in my opinion. But
yeah. Number 2 on the list, EMAC, it's another value guy. Who do you think it is? And it's at the wing. I'm surprised by this one, just if that helps clarify too.
I don't. One of the Denver. Is it a Denver guy?
No. So it's Kevin Porter at small forward.
Oh, I should have
10% on DK, which feels like a lot for Kevin Porter, but still not a lot relative to the overall slate. So,
what are the odds that three guys are named Porter Jr. in the NBA right now?
That's a good point. I wouldn't have thought that would be.
They're not related, by the way.
Well, that'd be odd if they were all Porter Jr.
Just saying.
They all have the same. I don't even know how that would work biologically. It would be very difficult to pull off. EMAC, number 3 on the list. Who do you think it is? It's our first expensive player out of this game.
If it's not, it's either Love or Jokic.
You are right. Kevin Love at 8%.
I would like to be over that. I am not, but that is what I think is a good spot today.
How would you feel about Aaron Holiday, who's also at 8%?
Gosh, I hope I didn't have any of him. That's how I feel about that one.
Yeah, I have, I think, 1 or 2 lineups with him out of 60.
I have none.
Yeah. Don't mind it. Certainly not the best matchup in the world for him with the price up, but at 8%, like, why not? He's been doing well in tough matchups, so I'm sure.
Sorry, I got to change it to my other crunch. That was my game stack crunch. I want to make sure.
Oh, EMAC, so many crunches going. Such a crunchy fella.
This is. I'm glad Eddie's going to be back because I'm done with the weekday shows.
You're done with having to talk and do lineups at the same time. It's not
weekends enough are fine because I could focus on it throughout the day and have a fighting chance. But when I was working today, day job, so didn't quite get there. I don't have any still in my main.
All right, let's just burn through the rest of these. Domantas Sabonis at 8%. That just feels low, knowing what we know of him. Not a great matchup, but what are you going to do? Devontae Graham at 7%. As I mentioned, that was what we had the ownership projected for. I'm at 21, and I like that quite a bit. The price is weird. People won't be there. I'd rather have Luka, but I have some lines with him and Luka, and I think that Devontae Graham's got potential. Miles Turner at 6%. Nikola Jokic also at 6%. That seems kind of low as well. Jokic, just a more higher usage player with Gary Harris in that starting lineup. No Michael Porter in there. As we mentioned earlier, Gary Harris back in there and starting. Terry Rozier, 5%. Cody Zeller, 4%. Tristan Thompson at 3.5%. That feels a little low given the center matchup against Charlotte. It's one of the better ones in the league. Jeremy Lamb at 3%. Paul Millsap, 3%. Bismack Biyombo, 3%. I'm just going to see if anybody played themselves because we got a lot of guys just 3% to 0%.
I have 10% Holiday.
Wow, nobody played Malcolm Brogdon today.
He's out. Oh, yeah, you mean,
but usually you have like the 0.01%.
Oh, yeah.
So we can close the loop on that, but not today. Apparently nobody played themselves. Is Gilchrist still in? He's not playing, but I think he's still available.
He's, as far as I know, still dressing at least.
All right, well, screw it. Nobody played themselves in the early part of the slate. So good job by everybody to start 2020 on the right way, not playing yourself. And for the last time, well, obviously not the last time overall, but the last time today, once again, use that promo code 2020, the year. If you go to awesemo.com/join, get yourself 20 days for just $20 right now. And again, that's just 20 days moving forward. It's not just the first 20 days of the month. So if you buy it, I'll have this promo going for a few more days. But right now, just get in there, give yourself the year, start right. That's honestly the best way to do it. If you want to be a DFS player, whether you're casual or trying to be a little more sophisticated than that, just get in there now, use that deal, take advantage of it while you can, and get familiar with all the tools and data so you can have a more successful 2020. All righty, Mac, anything you want to plug here before we call it quits?
Nope. Yes, Fantasy Cruncher, because the Swaptimizer is going to get me out of some of these corners I just painted myself into.
Yeah, the Fantasy Cruncher, always worth thanking, of course. They do a great job in a million different ways. And but yeah, they are definitely gonna be helpful for EMAC today. The late swap optimizer as well. And of course, you can get yourself a Fantasy Cruncher membership along with the packages we have at awesemo.com/join too. All right, guys, hit that like button before you go. Tomorrow, I believe it's me and Josh back doing the show, so tune in then. EMAC will be back with Eddie Fear back on the weekend. Eddie will be, as he's confirmed he's back. He has not been taken by a cartel down in Mexico. Thank the Lord. So he'll be back with EMAC this weekend. But we appreciate all you guys. Hit that like button before you go. And Happy New Year. It's a new year, so start it off right. Just be the best version of yourself you can be, but at least be a little better year to year. That's all we can all do. We appreciate you guys. Have a good night. Good luck.